Welcome to the Speakeasy. I'm your host, Sareth, and for every episode, it's totally different. It's not like your normal podcast where I don't say, "Hey, subscribe to my channel," or whatever. But it is on the bottom there if you do want to subscribe. But there's just so many podcasts out there, and everyone says share, 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 and so it's just overwhelming. So we're taking the opposite route and see what happens and see if this can grow its legs on its own. And so what I do is I interview comics and I bring them into the secret society of the stand-up speakeasy, and then they invite their favorite folks towards the end, and I bring them onto the show, and it's a pretty cool experience, this experiment so far. So um, without further ado, I'm bringing Chris from Chicago. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Hello, hey, Sareth.
How are
Hey, how's it going?
you? Doing quite well. Thanks for joining me on the show this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Some days I do this in the afternoon, and some days I do it in the evening. But I never do this in the morning because I'm not a morning person. Because you know how stand up comics are. We just don't wake up that
See,
early.
I think we should have done this at like 4 in the morning just to see where we are mentally. I think it might have been a whole different show.
Absolutely, indeed. It's like, gosh, I had the best show of my life, or I just completely bombed. This is going to be interesting.
Can we bomb? Can this bomb?
Sometimes does no.
Oh, great.
Indeed. So, Chris, you have your life is a love letter to untreated ADHD, as it says in your bio.
Oh, totally.
What caused it? Naturally, or your love letter?
I mean, look, my mom told me in high school that she had me taken to a doctor, and I was diagnosed with ADHD. And or actually, no, not in yeah. So when I was little, she brought me to a doctor, and he said, "Oh, he should put me on. She should put me on Ritalin." And my mom was like, "No way." And so her way of treating me was to just let me run wild out on the town until sundown and come home, just like let it all out. And so I feel like that colored my whole way of existing. I was just like, all right, I've got to do this, I've got to make this, I've got to explore this thing until like I can't explore it anymore. And I think my whole life just became that exercise, and which I'm lucky, like my parents and the people around me have supported sort of these creative outlets and explorations. And I think if you look at like all the things I've done in my life for these over 40 years, it looks like that. And I've just, and that for me, that's the thing that keeps me sane, is to explore new creative challenges like nonstop.
And
That's my life's goal.
most definitely, I can guess that you were over 40 years old. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. I can't believe I made it this far.
Indeed, I'm Asian, so it's like I always tell people, Asians don't raisin, and so
Yeah, I know where it's Asians in comedy. That's why I'm excited about this podcast.
oh heck yeah, are you Filipino? I'm guessing.
Yes, yeah, I am.
Awesome. I figured because I'm like Hispanics and Filipinos have like the same like last name sometimes, and
Yeah,
they're like halfway across the world from each other.
and a pretty similar vibe,
Yeah.
social vibe. It's a lot of partying. It's a lot of family, a lot of partying, and a lot of eating. So
Yep. Same like Cambodians, that's what I am. And so it's like we just party and well, my parents like to drink Hennessy and play poker like that.
wow, they party harder than my parents. That's for sure.
Indeed.
I like the Hennessy and cards. I just picture like bowler hats, some cigars. So not mahjong, cards.
Yep, pretty much.
Wow.
Indeed. They just love poker and all the like Cambodian games and stuff like that. So I remember growing up and I would tell my dad, good luck, and then he would give me $1 so I would go away. And so that's like how I would make my money.
Wow. You made money by bothering people, so now you're in comedy. That's definitely going to lead you into a life of comedy.
I hope so. That'd be fantastic. But the paid gigs is they're far and in between. So
Yeah. Well,
yep.
there's nothing like, I don't know if you've ever seen, talking about bothering people with comedy. In Chicago, there are, at least pre-pandemic and pre-quarantine, there were just a ton of places where comedy shows, open mics just opened up. They're in cafes uh, and everywhere, in every whatever little store. And I don't know if you've ever seen this where you're at, but someone walk up to a window, see that there's comedy happening, and do a double take, stop for a second, and walk away, not wanting to go into a place where comedy's happening. Have you ever seen that?
All the time. It's
Yeah,
like especially the outdoor shows, like they see us and they hear us say all those dirty things through a microphone and like, ew, we're just not gonna go there. But then
yeah, yeah.
for some reason, some people love it and they just stand and watch us, or else they just come and sit down and watch us, and it's
Right. I always feel like, oh, I'm so sorry, location that we're doing comedy in. I feel really bad that we've made you lose money
yeah, absolutely.
because we're doing this. And then sure enough, 2 weeks later, the mic is no longer happening at that location.
Yeah,
Owners realize this is not good for business.
exactly. And that's why I love performing in Daytona Beach because, like, they said, if you get offended, there's a bridge down the street. You can just
Yeah.
jump.
Ouch.
Yeah, and they've been around for like 10 years now, so it's fantastic.
There you go.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
to go back to the I think the one thing is just like, if this is for anyone else that deals with it or is figuring out how to deal with their ADD, is like momentum, just sheer momentum, constantly moving, constantly pushing through. And quarantine and this pandemic has been this is the hardest thing to deal with. It's sort of like, okay, I can't really be around people. I, I can't keep moving. How do I keep moving forward? And making and creating in this isolated space is probably one of the biggest challenges, just mentally. But staying safe is like number one, staying healthy. But man, how are you doing it?
I'm just like separating myself from everyone, and just like whenever I put on like my fest, I just like said, we'll have two mics, we'll disinfect them all, and make sure everyone's socially distanced or facing forward, and they're not making face to face, or just making sure everyone washes their hands and have hand sanitizer, and just make sure everyone's good to go, because I don't know. This thing's like, we don't know where it came. Well, we know where it came from, but we just don't know how it'll affect people, like just on a daily basis. So just I used to go out a lot, but now that I'm in Florida, there's just too many spikes here and there, and just like I'm just gonna do all these interviews from home because I usually just be like man on the street and interview every single comic that I come across, like from open micers to headliners.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna do this because it's much safer, and I can just like crank these out as many as I can before, and then just promote them in 2021, and just like stockpile all these, and just that's what I plan to do with these things.
it's an oral history of everyone you've met.
Yep,
Do
and
you mainly focus on Florida?
not well. Now I'm breaking out more. Like especially when I go on tour and stuff. Like I will just like or go on like if I'm on vacation and I just want to do like a show or an open mic, I just grab my camera and just like just wherever it takes me.
I
I just
love it. So I'm guessing you would consider yourself an extrovert, though.
a little bit of both. Sometimes I
Yeah.
like my me time and stuff, but like I guess I'm half and half. I guess.
Yeah. See, I would always tell my wife, I'd be like, I'm an introvert, totally. And she's always like, you're not an introvert at all. Like, you find a lot of energy being around people. And I
Mm.
guess that's true. And I really, dealing with this, I'm like, oh, I'm not an introvert. I need to be around people. I'm shrinking like Superman without the sun. I'm like wasting away.
Indeed, most definitely. Like I'm horrible like around a lot of people, like in in a talking session. But like when I'm one
Yeah.
on one with folks, it's just so much easier because there's uh, just so many things going on. And I think I blame it on my zodiac sign because I'm a Capricorn, and I'm just like I'm horrible in large social settings. But if you have like me one on one, I'm totally cool. Like I don't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a good question. That's like yeah, figuring out group dynamics and then figuring out one to one is very different. And like being in a, I don't know, have you been on any Zoom shows where people are hanging out afterwards and there are like 30 people on the screen?
Yeah,
It's impossible. It's impossible to talk.
absolutely. I did that like last week because my buddy Larry Fulford, he's in Chicago. He has his
Yeah,
own
yeah.
show, and so I was there, and I'm just like, I don't know when to talk, or like after the show, because like we have to, we laugh and have the comedians tell jokes and stuff, and I was just there as a spectator, just supporting him and stuff. But it's just, I just there's some. It's like the Brady Bunch on those Zoom shows. It's like, all right,
Totally. And it's everyone wants to talk. No one wants to talk. Everyone wants to leave, but everyone wants to stay. It's just all
exactly. It's kind of like being in jail. It's like
it's a struggle.
it is absolutely. Oh man, so you've been a practicing artist for over 20 years. What got you into art?
I think I figured it out early on that it's the thing creating, doing visual work and creating keeps my brain together. It keeps me sane. And I find that when I'm not making, not drawing, not creating something new that I want to be made, that I start to just kind of lose my mind, literally. Like I just start to fall apart. And so I have figured out just over a lifetime of like making that that's the one thing that helps me gather my thoughts, focus my energy, and uh, just keep my life moving. That keeps my life moving forward. So that's why I can't stop making. There's just no way.
Indeed, most definitely. And you're a freelance photojournalist, like
Mhm.
me, and I love like photographing like concerts and comedians on stage and stuff. What got you into freelance photojournalism?
I mean, so in college, I was aiming to become a war journalist, a photo, a photographer, photojournalist, and that was the main goal. Like capture images that the world sees that changes our perspective on the dynamics of like social justice and all of that. But the one thing holding me back was that, well, a couple things. Number one, I'm so bad at directions. I get lost all the time, and this was at a time pre cell phones, pre maps. I'm just directionally challenged, which is not good as a war journalist. That was not going to work out. And also, I have terrible health. So those none of that was going to work out. It was just kind of a dream of my 20s. I actually ended up moving to Asia after college and lived in Asia for 3 months, building up like a new portfolio that wasn't connected to school and to just try my hand at it. And so I was mainly living in the Philippines, but my parents decided and got really scared of me living there. They were just thinking to themselves, like, we moved away from this, and now you're going to move there. So they pretty much thought I was going to die because like in terms of street smarts, it's one thing to be street smart here, and it's one thing to understand third world geopolitical, you know. Uh, so that wasn't going to happen. They ended up going to the Philippines and bringing me back. So I just realized maybe this isn't going to happen. There's no way I'm going to. I used up all the money I'd saved up to get there. And so I had to kind of restart and figure out how I was going to do that here. And it was pretty tough. I had a art education background, so I ended up teaching, and in the hopes of teaching for like 4 years, saving up and moving back to Asia. But that didn't happen. I ended up getting married, had a kid, and it just was not going to happen. So, lots of things happen in just a few years. You never
Absolutely.
know.
Indeed, most definitely. Like I have like a bad sense of direction too, and so I totally understand. Like when I lived in Los Angeles, I'm like, I don't know which way is the ocean, so I'm just gonna put everything in my GPS and just run with it.
Yeah, yeah,
And you never know, like in LA, like you could be in like a really nice neighborhood in one block and a really bad neighborhood in the next block. It's just a crazy city there.
yeah. So we're both navigationally challenged.
We are
Our
absolutely.
parents both party pretty hard.
Yep.
Uh, we're finding all our commonalities here.
Yep.
Wait, there's one thing I wanted to ask you about
Yeah.
because I was looking at your website and I saw your Clive Barker, your connection to Clive Barker and your love for Clive Barker. Because I just finished Lord of Illusions
Uh-huh.
with Scott Bakula. Have you seen that film?
Yep. I've seen it. There's a lot of CGI going on in that movie.
Man, early CGI, it's pretty crazy, and I think it's in need of a refresh. I think it could a new refresh could probably be pretty good for that one. I think Hellraiser's fine, but Lord of Illusions, wow, it
It,
got a little painful.
Indeed. I mean, there's like really cool death scenes in the movie, but there's books that have that character Harry Moore that's in a couple of them, like the Scarlet Gospels. So he's in that
Uh-huh.
book, and so there, Clive wrote a bunch of books, and so that character's in several of those his books. So if you want to like go beyond Lord of Illusions, read those books, and I'll message you those books to read. And
Yeah, definitely send me the book that you think is like a must read for Clive Barker. I haven't been like doing a lot of stand up or comedy over this quarantine process and pandemic process, but I have been reading. So I'm pretty excited about this sabbatical that I'm taking. And right now I'm in since it's October, I'm just reading horror books. I'm very excited about this journey. So definitely give me some recs. And
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll recommend like he writes children's books and young adult books too, so you can read those to your kids. And I'll recommend those too, and they're awesome.
nice. Yeah, my daughter is reading a book called Wicked Plants, and it's
Uh,
all about poisonous plants and stories connected to those plants. Serial killers, people using them for medicine and whatever. And she's been very excited about that. So if there's a good Clive Barker for children,
yep,
she would eat that up.
awesome. Yeah, I'll send you those recommendations too, because man, he's all over the place, and that's what I love about Clive. It's like he could write scary and he could write poems and
Yeah,
very
well, I think that's why he's buddies with Neil Gaiman, right?
yep.
I think
It,
they're best buds. It seems.
somewhat. There's an interesting story about Coraline and the Thief of Always. So because they're so similar, but you'll have to Google that story. And
I will. I will.
indeed, most
This is for our listeners and viewers.
indeed, most definitely. And
Chime in. Why don't you send your comments? Please post your comments on your favorite horror books, novels, and movies.
absolutely, and we'll respond, but be nice to us. So I tell people all the time. So those YouTube comments, they can get out of hand sometimes.
It's lovely. It's a lovely world out there.
Indeed. And so you mentioned that you teach children, and so you taught high schoolers and high school art for 13 years. What got you into teaching?
So it's an interesting journey, really, because I was a photo major. I ended up dropping that. I decided, so I was like transferring. I went to community college, and there was like a transfer sheet. One side was photography, and then on the other side was art education. And I just figured, well, uh, these seem pretty similar, like in terms of prerequisites. So I just did that. I decided in college that I didn't really need to be a photo major to shoot. Like it just didn't seem that necessary to major in it. So I just ended up focusing on art education as sort of a backup, just in case. But I had no intention of ever teaching. I decided to do photography, and then I told you about that long journey through Asia, and I was like, what am I gonna do? My healthcare is gonna run out eventually with my parents, and so I had to make sort of a game time decision to use that major. And it just so happened when I was turning 25, 26, my college professor called and said, "Hey, there's this job position opening up at this new school. You should try it out." And I was like, I don't want to teach. I'm going to be a photographer. I'm an artist. And so I don't know. It was a moment of desperation, kind of. And I just decided to submit an application because I was living at home. And like I said, my parents like to party. They would have been fine with me living at home the rest of my life. It was just like every night they're like, "Hey, you want to go see a movie? You want to go hang out? We're going to go out to eat." And I just thought to myself, I'm like, if I don't get out of here now, I may never leave. Like, this is too comfortable. My parents are too down with having a roommate. And I don't know if your parents are the same. Are
They are.
your parents the same? Like,
Yep, like my current living situation is like my parents have a house in Colorado and they have one in Florida, and so we just like rotate,
yeah,
because like my dad's like, you're not paying rent to a random stranger and having them live their best life, and I'm like, well, I want to like move out on my own eventually, because like I
right.
moved out on my own and they just want me back, and it's like it's just easier on the family because like
Yeah,
I'll inherit it and stuff, but I'm just like, but it's a cool setup that I like because like we never like see each other. We're always doing our own thing, so we just like rotate like each other, but we have those places that we can just, and that's what makes it easier for me to travel to Colorado and then put on the fest, and then because I have my own room there, and then we see each other, and then
that's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty cool setup.
I
I
think
dig it.
what people don't know that might be listening or watching is that Asian parents want us to live with them. They want to take care of us really well, but there's a reason. It's a deposit because we have to take care of them the rest of their life. In their old age, they live with us, and it's expected to that we'll take care of them. So it's like a deposit.
Pretty much. And now like my sister like lives upstairs with her husband and her kids, and then my parents live downstairs in their own living arrangements, and so it's a pretty interesting setup that my dad had like this master plan of how everything is going to be, and I'm like,
Yep.
all right, so I guess it saves me $1,000 a month,
Oh yeah.
and
And
stuff.
that's the money you use for your fest.
Pretty much like I just I give them money and all that stuff, and I pay like my part of the portion and make sure that they're good to go, and then I have like my fund, and like it's just like separated, and then whatever I have left I just keep raising until I have that goal that I need to reach for the fest, because like it's really hard to get sponsors, and plus I had like
Mhm.
a bad experience with sponsors like the first time I did it, and it's just like I'm just
What
gonna
did they expect of you? What did
um
they want?
well, like I set up like the proper boundaries. Like this is what you get for this much. It's like it's you sponsor it for like $400 per stage per
Yeah.
day, and then they're like, well, they gave me the money, and they're like, but we want more than this, and we're like, well, we just talked about it and stuff, and I'm like, this is I put your logo really big on the shirt, and like it all comes with this complete package, and then they just wanted more and more and more, like they're Billy Idol or something. It's
I've
like
been drinking your beer nonstop on stage.
yeah. And it was just like a huge mess. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna raise it myself. And
Yeah.
luckily, my friends are really cheap, and they don't ask for much. I'm not saying like they're cheap, but I'm just saying like they don't ask for much, and they just like whatever I can afford, they're just happy about it. Like they
They're
love
in for the love of the game.
absolutely, and I make sure that they're compensated whatever they want. Like they go, do you guys want food or drinks or like merch or cash? Like because some people just want cash and
Mhm.
and record their albums and stuff, whatever they need, and make more merch. And I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
But like the majority of the time, they just want the shirts because they're super rad. So it's like,
Are
oh
you designing the shirts?
yeah, I designed it with my buddy Charlie. He lives in Los Angeles, but we grew up performing stand up in Colorado together.
Yeah.
And so like I go, I just want a cross between Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and Hellraiser, and I just want to
Um,
mash those two together.
that was your direction was Hellraiser and Fear and Loathing. So it's like Gonzo art and what would Hellraiser be considered? Like style is that?
Well, we take all the Cenobites from Hellraiser, like Pinhead and Butterball and
Yeah.
Chatter and the female Cenobite and the engineer, and then we put them into like the Fear and Loathing scenes instead of
Oh,
Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp. So it turns out really neat. Like it's
that's great. And that's the shirt for the festival?
yeah, indeed.
Wow, that is nice.
So I'll send you like the promotional posters, and you'll see like, well, okay, now I know what this scene is, where like Tobey Maguire is the hitchhiker, and then like
Yeah.
and then you'll find out the convertible scene where they pick him up, and then like the scene where they're doing drugs after they check into the hotel, and then the drugs kick in, and then you'll find like the bathtub scene, and it just like follows along with that film, but with the Cenobites. So
See, I
that's
think we should not talk about comedy. I think we should just talk about horror. I think
it,
this is the horror part of the. We're switching. The podcast is now about horror. So
indeed. It's kind of
that's
like
all
the
I want
evil.
to talk about.
It's kind of like the Evil Dead, It's kind of like you blend that comedy with the horror, and then it just turns out perfect. So,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
indeed,
Although,
most that
have you seen the remake of Evil Dead?
I have. I wish it was more comedic, but I'm glad, Bruce Campbell made an appearance at the end of the end credits. So that made
Yeah,
it
yeah.
easier. So,
I was like, man, this is intense. It was pretty hard, you
yeah,
know. Like, it didn't do very good critically, but it was kind of great. I thought in terms of like changing it up a little
mhm,
and just the creature design and it being about addiction
yep,
was pretty painful.
yeah. There was just so much blood in that movie. So, well,
Yeah,
there was
a
so
lot
much
of
blood
suffering.
indeed, most definitely. But yeah, yeah, I enjoyed it, but I loved the original much better because it was just it lightened things up with the humor. So
Oh yeah, it's real kinetic.
indeed, most
A lot of movement, a lot of head movement in that, a lot of camera movement. Just
indeed,
like
most and you also in your bio said that you rode your mountain bike from St. Paul, Minnesota to Chicago. What inspired you to do that?
being restless, I think, was part of it, and I was part of like a Tanqueray AIDS ride that they used to have. The organization collapsed, but they would do these really long rides, and I just decided to do that. I figured that was the only window of time in my life that I'd be able to train and do that, and like the dream of riding over 500 miles, with a whole bunch of friends just sounded like the thing I had to do. And like I said, I'm not like the healthiest person, but I just wanted to see if I could do something like that. And yeah, I did it on a mountain bike, which was insane, and it ruined my knees and my ankles for years. Like I just wasn't riding correctly, and generally you wouldn't ride that many. You should use a road bike if you're going to do something that far, and so it was just a challenge I had to take on.
Indeed, most definitely. And you were once considered for the Bravo Artist reality show Work of Art.
Yeah,
How did all that unfold?
I went through this phase where I was trying to join just any contest I could get into or be a part of. I just was like, let me try my luck. I did a bicycling magazine contest to win a bicycle, and you had to make a video for that. So I joined that because my bike got stolen, and then won that. And I just was sort of like, oh, let me just try to win more stuff. I got a little crazy, and uh, the production company for that reality game show was the one Magical Elves, which does Project Runway. And so I was like, you know what? I've been doing a lot of work. I've been sort of like increasing my art stock, in terms of what shows I was doing. And it seemed like a good time. I had a good portfolio. and it seemed like a good time to just join something like that and see if I could just get out there and get more representation. So I got pretty far. They flew me to LA, and I was in the kind of final round of casting, and it just collapsed. Like I collapsed during the. I didn't collapse, but like I think my chances collapsed when we were doing the pre-interviews because it was so scary, and I was just like, oh, it was all the execs sitting in a single room, and this was like pre stand up for me, so I was not used to a crowd that doesn't react, and it was just execs in a brightly lit room, one camera, and them asking you intense questions and you having to respond with like snippets, and I think I would be very ready to do that now, but back then I kind of freaked out. So yeah, that fell apart. I think my chances were pretty good until that moment.
It's like they were interrogating you or something,
Totally, that's what it is,
Where were you on the night of blah blah blah? It's like,
Exactly. Like, have you done any of the NBC stand up like auditions or any of those like auditions for shows?
while I was out in LA, and no, I was totally focused on being Clive's apprentice and being a concert journalist. That I didn't even have didn't know what stand up was. Like I would go and
Yeah,
support my friends that they would come tell me about their show. I'm like, okay, I'm free this evening. I don't have a show to cover. I'll come and check out your stand up show. And then
yeah.
and the crazy thing was when I was with Clive, he was like, dude, you make me laugh and you tell all these interesting stories of your time in LA. Why don't you try stand up? And I'm like, and see where that takes you. And so that's what got me in stand up. I'm like, Clive kind of forced me into it, He's like,
Yeah.
give it a shot.
That's so good. If Clive tells you to do stand up, you got to do stand up.
Yep. And so every once in a great while, I'll send him some clips that I've done. And the funny thing was when Simon Bamford, he played Butterball in the first two Hellraisers. He filmed my set in Atlanta because we were there for a horror convention. We were there at the same time, and so
Yeah.
he was there to support me. And so he filmed my set in Atlanta. It was completely sold out. And he goes back to Clive, and because the whole Hellraiser gang was there, and he just told everybody what happened that night, what I said on stage, and so they were just dying laughing.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'll send you that video clip too because there's just
Yes, please.
6 minutes of just me being really dirty on stage, but everyone just they were moaning and groaning, and it was just the best set of my life. It felt like. So.
We just do a picture in picture right here. All right, everybody. Here, I'll put it. Just greens. Put it in. Put the video in. I'm going to your side.
I think it's possible, but I think
yeah. Yeah, I've been saying I'm just gonna try to technically just do some mashups, throw up some I want the emojis floating across the screen, news on the bottom,
indeed go
Hellraiser
on.
samples, merch, buy the shirt that we talked about. Here's a link to the movie that we talked about. Books.
Indeed, yeah.
Chaos. Chaos.
I'm one of those cheap Asian folks, I tip well, but I just take the free trials and just do it. But if I paid for this, it would just be yeah, you can do all that stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'll just take the free route just for the time.
There's more functionality to this thing.
Yeah, you can do everything set new backgrounds and all that stuff. But
everyone subscribe to Sareth's masterclass. He has a masterclass. He's told me to read this. Please subscribe, and you can do his Patreon, and please support the cause.
And my OnlyFans too. I'm kidding. I don't have an
an OnlyFans.
But in time, I'll get one of those if COVID gets bad enough. So.
There are a lot of stand-ups doing OnlyFans. I feel like that's a thing, right?
Yeah, there's it's just not for adult actors and actresses. There's just comedians on their Patreons the same way, but OnlyFans is more Craigslist back pages.
Huh? Are a lot of stand-ups doing nude subscription only stand-up?
I wouldn't doubt because there's a lot of like underwear shows. They probably have it on there. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
All
I
right.
just
Sareth is on OnlyFans. Yeah.
yep. No, in time I'll get one.
In time. Hey,
I,
Kyle,
I feel more comfortable like with the camera instead of in front of the camera. So I'm just camera shy.
yeah, your parents are gonna be like, "What are you doing in our places?"
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I learned this in Bangkok because I went there for like 2 weeks. So, oh man, I was I guess on my friend's podcast, and they're like, "What's a soapy?" And I'm like, "I'll explain later." So
What's a soapy?
yeah,
Did you say a soapy?
yeah,
Oh my god.
yep. They made me go into it because like I had an experience with the soapy, but I didn't go through with it. It's
I can't say I know what that is, but I can only guess what it is. And I'm hoping it's a Dove related commercial thing.
they use Dove, but with a lot of love.
99%, 99.9% pure,
Yep.
I think is the subtitle to that show or activity. I don't know.
Most definitely. Oh man, good stuff. So you opened for Kyle Kinane too. What was that experience like?
That was really fun. We grew up in the same suburb, and so he had asked, like, a guy had to drop he had to drop a guy who got canceled, unfortunately,
Mm.
and he was like, hey, let's just do a hometown show, and got another guy from our hometown, and he decided to do it that way, do the show that way, and it was really fun, but it was a lot of pressure. It's very new, very green, and I was like, oh no, like, this is a hometown friend. I can't screw this up. If I screw this up, this is going to be really bad. So it was an unbelievable amount of pressure. I was real terrified, but it went well. It was super fun. And it just was kind of nice doing it with people from my hometown, you know. And one guy was older than us, graduated from our high school a little bit earlier. I had never met him, but it was a great time. I really enjoyed it. So, and I felt a lot more comfortable when I heard Kyle laugh backstage when I was performing. So I was like, okay, like, if this first joke doesn't go well, I'm screwed. I'm gonna crumble. I'm gonna fall apart and have to leave like a minute in, you know. But once I heard him laugh, I was like, okay, I think I've got the okay, you know, because there's nothing like disappointing your friend. It's one thing to disappoint a stranger that you'll never see again, you know. But oh my gosh, like, I don't know if he knew how much I was freaking out and I didn't let that on, but I was real. I had to go to the bathroom. I had to take a dump probably like 12 times that day because my bowels were just not holding together for that one.
Indeed, it's pretty cool that Kyle was like listening in on it because sometimes just like the headliners just go to the back and just chill with the rest of the comics and
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like, just let me know what time I go up, and then but then for him to be like that, it's pretty neat.
I think that's one thing you'll hear about Kyle that comics, like my friends have said and other comics have said, is like, oh man, one Kyle hangs out and he listens to your set. He hangs out and watches you, you know, and they're always like surprised by that. But he absolutely loves comedy, you know, and
Yeah,
he wants to see you succeed or not, you know. But he's there. He'll be there. So
indeed, most definitely. And so, you performed at the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art too. What was that like to perform in a museum? That's pretty awesome.
it's sort of my dream. I was like, man, had I known that doing stand up and, you know, doing comedy would have got me into the MCA, into a show at the MCA, I would have done it way earlier. Like, I've been working my whole life to get work scene at the MCA, and that's how I did. So it was a big surprise. You know, it was kind of shocking, and that also was a great time. It was great to be able to be at the MCA and make fun of the MCA. So that was sort of like a double dream, you know. To speak to like the racial dynamics too of who the MCA shows, and it's like any other arts organization, and I think it was due time to be able to make fun of it and have my voice heard. No, I don't know.
Indeed, most definitely. Some of my favorite shows take place in houses and basements and stuff. And you produced the annual apartment and house comedy tour. What got you into producing the annual apartment and house comedy tour?
So the one thing that I wanted to do and that I was really excited about, in doing comedy was I love alternative spaces. I like weird spots, doing comedy in like unfinished basements, and those crowds are just fun, and people that show up, they're kind of open to anything. The one thing about the house shows, I think when I started doing it 3 years ago, is that I just wanted to see if I could produce a good show. I had left teaching and really missed just organizing things, and you know all the little components of it, putting spreadsheets together and producing a class, producing my own space. I really missed that and wanted something that felt like organizing a class, like a specialized class or something. And I wanted to see if I could do that. Plus, I wanted to meet comics that I've seen at mics and at shows, but just never really had a chance to talk to, and to see if I could just put on a good show. And those ended up being, most of them end up pretty good. But the hard part, I think, about doing, and this with producing your fest, is when you're producing, you don't get to do a lot of comedy. If you're going to produce well, you've got to do a lot of hustling to get people promoting, hustling to get people to come out to these shows. And so it's just like a limited run. It's 1 to 2 months, and then it's done, because it's like I want to do comedy again. I want to do mics. I want to, hang out and practice and like develop new material, which is kind of hard doing when you're producing, because you're just kind of freaking out the whole time that the show isn't going to go well. And so I don't know. That's one thing. I wanted to just develop and have fun making a show that I wanted to be seen. Like you want to see certain comics perform together and just see what that looks like. And that's it. So there's a bit of like curiosity there. It's like, oh, okay, we've got 6 shows. I'd love to see these comics work together and see what this looks like, and see if this is just totally insane, or maybe it doesn't work. But I think it's really fun. And plus, like, I'm connected to parents of my my kids classmates, and so their homes there, and then I have like former students. I'd reach out to them, so there's like 20-year-olds, so you get all kinds of crowds. Sometimes it's just college kids, sometimes it's kids that have just graduated college, and you have like new professionals, or you have kids in their former students that are in their 30s, and then you have adults, so people from like age 40 to 70, so you get these really different vibes. And that's the fun of doing like a house show tour, I think. Maybe the comics would say something else.
Indeed, most definitely. I know it's like like I do really bad in front of folks that are old, and so like every single time, because they're like they go, you have a weird material, and you're really dirty. And
We don't get your references.
yeah, sometimes they get it's like way over their heads, but but the young crowd, like people our age, they're just like, go get him, you dirty boy. Like, okay.
You dirty boy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found my voice in was like being really dirty, but not using a single curse word in every set. So like I could be like
Ah,
30 minutes just being really dirty, but like not using a curse word. So that's what
I have tried to do a dirty joke. It
I.
doesn't work for me. I'm too uncomfortable. It doesn't seem to fit my vibe.
Most stuff. Yeah, they go like my buddies in Daytona. They're like, you sound like a little kid, And then when you say all these really dirty things, it just makes it so much more funny, and just like we're just dying laughing. And it's like he goes, "You have a bigger pair than any of us because you just say random things that just you just say it like no filter."
Again, Sareth on OnlyFans. Please subscribe to his channel and his Patreon.
Indeed, most definitely. I'll get those set up after the interview. So you also you performed in several festivals, the Milwaukee Queen City Comedy Festival. What was it like performing in on that festival?
So I've only done two festivals, and Milwaukee was my first try because it was drivable. It was really fun, and I love that it's a festival where the submission fees and any money that they make actually goes to charity. So it's an awesome festival to do, and just like any or most festivals, you don't get paid, but you do feel like you're at least supporting the cause. So, and it's well run. The crowds were great, and the shows were like it's such a variety of kinds of shows that it was really a good time. And I don't know, for me I was also like kind of nervous because I'm like, oh, like how do you meet these new comics like from other scenes, and like just entering your the scene for a first time. Sometimes people are kind of closed off, or you're just like, I don't know how to interact. So I was very nervous about that, and it ended up being a really good time. Made some good friends there. And but the one thing that was hard was a lot of people ended up staying in Milwaukee, but I felt a little too guilty doing that because of my kids. So I actually drove home after like late night after the shows were over, and then driving back to Milwaukee the next day. So it was pretty stressful. And I didn't get to hang out as much as I would have liked, but I just had a little too much guilt, I think. And plus, that was pretty early on when I had started doing comedy. So I was just like, I don't know if how to do this. But the second festival in North Carolina, that was my first time just like really going away and being able to stay and hang as long as I wanted to. And that was interesting because I wanted to just see how much money it was going to cost versus like how much time I was doing and like what the response was. And it ended up being just like so expensive that I felt a little guilty about that in terms of like spending. I like have you done any festivals?
Not yet. Like I got accepted into two of them this year, but COVID said no,
Yeah,
and then so
yeah.
they postponed it. So I got accepted. They postponed it to next this upcoming May, both festivals. So I have one in Santa Monica or Los Angeles, and then I have one in Chicago. So
Uh-huh.
it's like so you'll see me in your neck of the woods in May.
Yeah.
So
Wait, what's the Chicago one?
it's the Midwest Queer Comedy Festival.
Oh, fun.
Yep. So they go, we just love your jokes and how dirty they are, and how like you can tell like it was just like it's perfect for our fest. So like awesome. So I can't wait to gross people out and like make people feel uneasy with like my sense of humor on that stage. So
Yeah, yeah. See, I think my thing with the festival in North Carolina is that, it ended up costing a lot, but I could get that much time here and more and like do little shows, and I don't know if the value per dollar was necessarily there. It was fun, and I think if I was young and in my 20s, it would have been like maybe better. I could have used the time. I don't know. Like I just ended up going to North Carolina and being like, oh, I want to do all this tourist stuff. I want to see all the museums. I want to catch like all this. I was like a dad on vacation. That's what it felt like.
indeed, like with my fest, it's like I do my best to like I know how expensive it is to like travel and do that stuff. So I'm like, whatever you guys, need, like, if they're traveling from out of town or whatever, like, I'll help take care of that, help with that burden of like, I can't believe how expensive it is and all that stuff. So I just like recommend people flying with Frontier and like
Yeah, yeah,
saving as much as possible. But the cool thing about Pueblo is like it's not that expensive. Like it's a low cost of living town, and like you can get food like that's really good for like the low, and that's why I love like having it there. It's like it
yeah,
doesn't cost much. It's just show up and have fun. That's all I ask.
yeah. And you do a lot of your festival stuff, your personal festival out of pocket. You were saying, right?
Yep,
Right.
raising the funds on my own and making sure everyone's taken care of and all that stuff.
Yeah, I
Like
know that's definitely what I try with the house tour. Is I try to guarantee a certain amount. If the donations from the audience don't match what I've guaranteed, then it's like out of pocket. And so it can get expensive. So a limited time is fine. And I feel like in terms of doing comedy, I'd rather spend my money that way than maybe doing too many festivals or something. Like it's like, okay, the amount I would spend doing festivals, I could just run a show here and have a bunch of fun with my friends. And like the dream is to bring someone from outside or like out of town to do it. But I don't know. It's sort of like any money that I get from doing comedy here, I would just put it kind of towards the house show, which was nice. I feel like it just, putting the money back into the scene,
yeah, it's
which
like an interesting ecosystem that
yeah, definitely.
yeah, I'd much rather put like funds in my friends' wallets than than anywhere else. Just keep their
I
dreams
agree.
alive. It's a it's a pretty cool system like that. And the festival that you spoke of was the Rally Oak City Comedy Fest. So that's a pretty cool long name of a festival. So that the good stuff. But let's see here. You were also a contributing writer and illustrator for Omnarch. Is it Omnarchy?
Yeah, Omnarchy.
Yep.
Omnarchy.com. I'm not anymore. I like it got too hard for me to like make the meetings because of my family and my kids. It got too crazy, but it's so great. It's futurized news, and basically it's satirical writing, and but it's all about the future. So it's a world during the apocalypse, and there's the Omnarchy has happened. So I suggest everyone reads it. It's great. The writers are wonderful, and it's perfectly suited to what's happening now. So it kind of predicted that this would all happen.
Goodness.
So, so
I,
everyone check out omnarchy.com. They're so great.
I'll definitely check it out for sure because it totally is perfect for these times for sure.
Yes.
And so you're also a producer of Freak Fest at the Hideout. How did you get involved with Freak Fest at the Hideout?
The best part of that, so the best part of that is I became a producer. We did one show and then the quarantine and the pandemic happened. So that show is a long running show. Meg Stalter started it, and the Richie Owens, and then it just like I got brought on to be a producer, and then the venue closed. It's still open. They're doing virtual stuff now, but basically we haven't been able to do shows. So kind of stinks. It's one of the greatest, weirdest shows. It's like my dream show to be on, and unfortunately, we have shuttered our doors for now.
Indeed, it's on hiatus, but I'm hoping that it does come back because it sounds like a lot of fun. Even just the name of it sounds pretty fun.
Oh, so fun. It's so fun and so weird. But it's a variety show. There's musical acts, there's um, all kinds of performance, and then comedy, of course. So,
Indeed, and you mentioned this was part of your bio too, and you mentioned your kids and stuff, and you said that they only love you if you made a satisfactory dinner, which
yeah. It's true. I don't know if anyone watching or listening has kids, and like my kids are so mad if the food I've made isn't good, but
indeed.
they're so happy if the food's great. And it's just an emotional roller coaster. It's very hard. It's so tricky. And like that's the other thing doing comedy. I mean, you'll constantly hear like, oh, doing the grind. Like if you're not doing like 5 to 8 to 10 open mics and shows every week, you're not a real comic. But man, try no none of you have kids. If you have kids, it's like it's that a little bit of the grind, but it's making food before you leave and then coming home and having to clean the kitchen and make sure you're all set for the next day. It's a real hustle, I have to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what I use quarantine for, is like learning how to cook. And gosh, I'm a horrible chef, but I just make happy accidents like I'm Bob Ross in the kitchen.
Have you been learning any new dishes?
I tried, like I did like stir fry and whatever
Uh-huh.
my parents tried to teach me. Like I made like fried rice, and
No Cambodian food? No specific like Cambodian dishes?
I wish I could make it like them, but like my cooking is bad. Like my parents are really awesome, and because they like growing up, they were chefs at the restaurant. They learned how to
Yeah,
cook
yeah.
refugee camps and stuff, and one of the refugee camps was in the Philippines too. So they had one
Wow.
in Bangkok, and so whatever they learned, and they turned it into like a restaurant. But they're my two favorite chefs, other than Raekwon, the chef of the Wu Tang Clan.
Shout
So
out to Raekwon.
absolutely no Emerald Lagasse here, just Raekwon the chef. Indeed, but yeah, like I tried making food, but it's just like it just is not happening. But
Yeah.
but I learned, and it's fun just making those happy mistakes, and I learned how to make those banh mi sandwiches that the Vietnamese make, and learn how to pickle my own pickles, like vegetables, and that worked out pretty good. So
I've started to do like online cooking classes,
uh,
and I did one that was just knife skills, and it was so fun. I'm like, if I'm in here and I have to be home, I'm just gonna like, I've got to at least become a better cook. Like this will be a waste if I don't learn how to just cook more efficiently and just better, and learn some new recipes or whatever. And it's been fun, but we've also done them for our kids where we're like, all right, you're taking this class, you're making dinner. So your class is on. Go watch the screen, go make this food. So that may help. That's my advice.
absolutely, most definitely. And so I was looking through your CV too, so we'll break
Yeah.
down everything because like I promised you that we would, and so we
Yeah,
would
my whole career, please.
absolutely. So
I,
this
I will say that you're going to be reading a list of failures. So,
uh, well, those failures are not bad because like they're lessons learned. So
oh, yeah.
like failing is fun as long as you fail forward and you pick yourself up and do it again and all that stuff.
I hope that's what's happening.
Indeed. So you're in a BFA in art education in 2000 at the University of Illinois in Chicago. What were those years like?
Oh, I'm gonna recap my whole college career. So, I went to community college, which was fine. It was fun, and basically, like, I don't know what your high school counselors were like, but my high school counselors were like, oh yeah, you should go to community college. And so a lot of my friends, we just went to community college, and maybe because our grades were bad, or there must have been some incentive, but that was like really informative, I think, in terms of being able to do any class that I wanted. I like personally, my parents were just like, I don't know, go to college. They had no idea. They're immigrants, and they're just like, I think you just go to college. So I don't really have anyone to talk to about that, or where to go, what to try. So I thought college was you just take classes in anything that you are interested in. And that's what I was able to do at community college, because it's like you did a quarter and it was $250. Like, at least back then, it was so cheap. And I just took any class. I'm like, oh, I'm interested in that subject. Let's take this class. Let's take this class. And then I realized, like, oh, I got to leave here at some point, or else I'm just never going to get out. And ended up just doing art ed, which ended up being like the best thing that I ever could have done. I think I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was just going to become a photographer and that was going to be my life. But like with art ed and then teaching, I got to do everything that I'm interested in because I love doing video work, I love doing photo, I love drawing, I love painting and making sculptures. So it sort of encompassed all of those things. And I never would have known had I not taught that, like, oh, this allows me to like pursue all of that stuff and convey that excitement to these kids, like what is the feeling of making art? Like I get to give kids that sort of excitement, get them interested. I knew, like, I taught at a gifted school, and a lot of the kids weren't going to go to art school. It might be like 3 to 5 kids out of an entire senior class that were going to apply to art school. So I knew that, but it was just like, oh, if these kids are just going to be doing art for this time, I want to make that as exciting and like interesting as possible. And I don't know if I accomplished that. I'd like to think I did, but you know, doing doing art ed was the best thing I think that ever happened to me. Plus, it allowed me to like have a life. So I don't know. You freelanced, right? Like
Yeah.
you freelance. So I was freelancing, and the one thing that made me realize that I needed a full time was number one, healthcare. I really wanted to have healthcare outside of my parents. But then, secondly, I was on a shoot for the Chicago Reader. I parked downtown. My car got towed. It ended up costing like 175 to $250, something like that, to get my car from the pound plus the ticket. And I was getting paid $150 for the shoot from the paper. And I just realized I don't think this is sustainable. Like I don't know how I'm gonna do this for a living. Like this is so crazy. So then I ended up teaching, and it ended up being great. You get to teach, and then you have your summers off, and then over the summers I would just like work on paintings, make art, explore, go travel, go to museums, learn more about art, like get excited about making work and new work. I'd go to New York, LA, San Francisco, or go abroad, and I could do that because of like teaching and being single. So I don't know. I recommend it for anyone. Like teaching is amazing as a creator. Like when you get healthcare, I like to say that that's like it's like making $1 million.
Indeed, most definitely. Yeah. My guidance counselors were like, you took all these easy classes just to get straight A's for your senior year to get into a good school. We're definitely recommending community college for you.
Oh
Yeah.
man!
And then I got
Well,
like
did you go to community college?
I did, and then I got probation, and then I got suspension, and then I transferred
No.
to I transferred to the university in town because I didn't want my parents to know that I got suspension from a community college. So,
Yeah, your
but I
parents are like, we escaped the Khmer Rouge, and then our son, our
absolutely
son blows it in community college.
yeah. Indeed, but it took me 7 years to get a 4 year degree, and so like Chris Farley and Tommy Boy. So it's just like it works for me. So till this day, it's hanging up in their favorite room in the house, and I'm like, you're the ones that paid for this degree, because
Oh, they're
so,
so proud.
yeah, and like 'cause, like growing up, when I worked for them in the restaurants, they didn't pay me, and so like, well, the least we can do is just pay for your education since we didn't pay you for those 10 years. So it's
Oh,
like, all
that's
right,
good. Yeah,
that works for me. So I'm glad I made it out like in 7 years. But the schooling
yeah,
was cheap though. Like back in the day, schooling was cheap. But
yeah. You finished. You
indeed,
got the paper.
indeed, and that's what matters the most to my parents. I'm just like, it's just a paper to me. So, but if you guys want, you can just hang it up. So,
Yeah, yeah.
indeed,
I mean, I will say it really did. It's like teaching allowed me to kind of have a certain kind of life, and like I really really appreciate what it afforded me, and I did it for 13 years, which I did not expect to do. I really thought it was going to be a short term thing, and it was a great career. I left very happy. So
indeed. I don't think I can handle all that. But what I do is like, when I go back home, I'll reach out to my teachers and be like, "Hey, can I be like one of your guest speakers for today? And you can take the day off." And that's what I do for my teachers. And like, absolutely, I need a day off, and so I just go back and
Wait, you go
inspire.
back to your high school?
Not to my university,
Oh,
but in time I'll probably reach out to my old high school. But they're tearing it down to build a new one, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
what do you talk about at your college, your
Um,
university?
my teacher goes, "You've had like the most insane career after college. Like, talk about your time with Clive and how you became a concert journalist while you were out there, and how you got to cover like like it was like you treated it like a time machine where, and like I got to see like the Doors play, like except for
Yeah,
Jim Morrison and just like all these bands that I grew up listening to. Like they go, just tell us your story because like it's just the most interesting story. Like you got to hang out with the Wu-Tang Clan here, and then like all this other stuff, and they're just blown away. So I just go back and reach out to my teachers and say, "Hey, do you want me to talk to your kids about this job that doesn't pay much, but it's a whole lot of fun?" And I'm like,
yeah. It's that sounds really fulfilling.
"Yeah, indeed." And so like I'm taking my mass comm degree, which is mass communications, and just like doing that with stand up because like you're talking to the masses and you're communicating with
Yeah,
them. It's a new way to use your degree, so it's like it's fun.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And the
you
other
also
thing is like, I think what's great is like you don't. It's just like with photography, you don't even need the degree. You just if you love doing it, you'll do it. And that's like one thing I would always tell students. I'm like, you don't have to go to art school to make art. Like that's not necessary. And art school's super expensive. Like you're gonna make art no matter what if you love making it. Like whether people tell you it's bad or good, if you love making, you're gonna make because that's what you have to do, like inside. So like that driving force causes us to do that. And that's like what makes me feel human, and also just excited about living. I don't know if you feel that way, but
oh,
I
absolutely.
definitely feel that way.
Indeed, there's just an energy about making art, and like whether it's photography or painting, whatever it is, it's just you put your heart and soul into it, and like it's just whether it's stand up to like people feel it, and that's what I want, like people to feel stuff like beyond them.
Yeah, yeah. And and comedy's funny, and it's weird. I mean, there was a lot of withdrawal as I was in quarantine because there's sort of that cycle of like the excitement you feel ramping up to a show and then doing the show, whether it's going well or poorly, and then hanging out and then trying out new stuff, practicing somewhere else. That cycle of like the emotional ups and downs and trying to balance that out. And then ending up in quarantine where you're kind of at like a plateau state where it's like if you like I don't know if you've done any Zoom mics. I haven't done them. I've done like one virtual comedy show, but it just still felt like a weird wall. And like even though we're like talking, there's nothing like being face to face, obviously, but doing comedy and not hearing anyone, but seeing like faces laughing, or it's just such a strange experience that I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's what I want to do right now. But with live comedy, I love sort of riding that wave of emotion and then having it like come down from it, live your normal life, and then ramp up to this like alternate experience. And like that up and down is like kind of great. I love how manic it is.
Absolutely, I agree. Like I did one of the Zoom shows for the Crazy Vocations comedy festival because like they did that the first time, and I tried it and I'm like, I can't really do this, like, just sitting down doing stand up. So I'm just gonna wait it out and see what happens. And I'd much rather be standing up than sitting down for stand up. And, like you said, it's like you just see their faces, but like camera view, like you can't hear them laughing, or you can hear them laughing, but it's just not the same kind of energy that that I miss. So,
Yeah, definitely. I Having said that, I'm like, oh, I think maybe I have to start doing like virtual mics again or something. Like I got to start like practicing and putting material together because like I do have this fear that I might not be able to return. What happens? What happens if it's like I can't do it anymore? Just can't like get myself to try.
Indeed, same here. I'm just like, hopefully it comes back to normal, like some form or fashion. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But you were also in 2000. You were in the Chicago Public Art Group, CPAG, for you were the assistant sculptor and installer and painter. What was that time like?
So, I mean, that was like right out after college, and CPAG is an awesome organization because they they do murals, they do public artwork that's for specific communities, and it like they'll bring in like student and guest artists, and but I think the one thing about it, the one reason I did it too, my professor ran it, but the one who also offered me to or told me to apply for that one teaching job, but they pay really well, so that's like one of their things, like we pay artists a good market price, and I thought that was awesome, and I used that money to go to the Philippines and to live in Asia. So that was like one reason I did it, was to just sort of like save a bunch of cash, be able to upgrade my camera equipment, and then pay for printing at a lab in the Philippines and do all of that. So I think that was like a very important part of my life.
Indeed. And from 2000 to current day, you were a freelance photographer, the Chicago Reader, Chicago Reporter, like a Catalyst, Pistol, Streetwise, and an independent filmmaker. What got you into all those fields?
Yeah, a lot of those magazines are now gone. They've collapsed. Uh, those were my film photography days. And no, but shooting, I think that was like a lot of that, the things, the publications that I listed were, I mean, that was sort of the hustle and the grind, right? Like you're trying to get published. And a lot of that was even pre, sort of like, that's pre Instagram for sure. And it was so hard to get your work seen. And I was just kind of trying to get work out there. I think that was like the main thing, getting a career, trying to make it on as a onto like a staff of a newspaper or whatever. But one of the things I like to say, that I've escaped multiple bubbles, and like with photography, I ended up teaching, and the year I ended up teaching, which was 2002, was the year film photography kind of started to collapse. Kodak collapsed. They laid off 20,000 people. Film was disappearing. And it was like getting harder and harder to be a photojournalist, at least on the lower end, because like publications were wanting people to shoot digitally, and digital cameras, like good ones, were $3,000 to $5,000. So it just wasn't. I wasn't able to do that. I bought one of the earliest Nikons for 1,000, maybe $1,500, and it was so terrible and unreliable that it drove me nuts. I felt very uncomfortable doing jobs that way, but no one wanted to pay for film anymore. It's like I'd submit 10 rolls of film for a job, and they'd get mad for having to process all that. So I sensed that I was sort of at the tail end of what I could do with the amount of money that I had. So I did that. And yeah, it was just, that was sort of the hustle. I wish like Instagram had existed back then, and I think I could have like got my work out there a lot easier. But it's just sort of like a picture of what it was like to try to do it back then.
Indeed, I totally agree with you, and that's what happened with like the old newspaper that I worked with, like the online newspaper, and it was called the Examiner, and they folded online, and
Yeah.
like all my works went away, but I printed out the ones that meant a lot to me, like so.
You didn't have them archived?
I that no,
Whew.
Yep. So I just saved like my Deftones article, and I saved my Doors article, but other than that, everything else went away, which was like 150 concert articles. So it's like,
Oh man.
oh well. But the good thing is, like, I used that platform to like write about the bands in my hometown, and that's how the festival started. It was like my articles were like the mortar, and they were the bricks, and then we just put the festival together, and so it was just all organic from the ground up. So
Yeah.
and so it's more like what we brought to the table, rather than, I mean, I was just like a little piece of the pie, but like we're just a slice of it, but together we're like the whole piece of the pie. So
Yeah, yeah. Like for me, one of the online publications that I worked for, I just did it so that I could see shows for free. It's like, oh, let's shoot a picture of this show or this band. And then, the Chicago Reporter was more serious journalism. And I did that one because it allowed me to, well, they would send me to places I never would have gone otherwise. So the Chicago Reporter does or did stories on social justice issues within Chicago, and they sent me to a family where the woman's husband had been taken at the airport and disappeared, but like taken by the government and disappeared. So I had to like do their portrait, but listen to that story, or they would send me into like the projects, and there would be like community meetings or policing things. So I really enjoyed doing those jobs because it forced me to meet people that I never would have met otherwise, which is sort of the thing I love about doing comedy too. And I think also leads to me doing you may have seen like on my website, I've been doing portraits of Chicago comedians, and like that's sort of like an extension of the earlier work I had done when I was in my 20s. So it's just sort of like, oh, going to these places that I don't know what I'm going to find, but like trying to make something out of that experience and out of that space. So that, I'm constantly trying to connect all the things I did from my past into my present.
yep, most definitely, and I see that with all your works, and like your aerial footage, and the comedians in their houses and their natural settings, and
Yeah.
it, it's so rad. I think
Thanks.
the typical photo is just them on stage with a microphone, and it's just like, yeah, it's a regular comedy photo. But then when I saw your photos of like the comics living in their in their environment, it's like, wow, that's a really cool way to capture a comedian inside their in their house. So it's pretty
Yeah,
neat.
and it's fun because like especially as a parent, trying to be a responsible parent, it's really hard to hang out at a bar till like 2 in the morning and then try to take my kids to school at like 7:30 in the morning, like getting ready, getting up at 6:30, getting my kids ready, making sure, and then still being a good parent. So like I can't do that, but doing the photo series, it's like, oh, we can hang out. It's generally daytime. We could talk over a coffee and have this great conversation and then make this work together, which I found like very, very exciting and really fun, while also being able to still like be a good dad.
Most definitely. And it translates pretty well in your works, I can tell you. Indeed. So in 2001 to like current day, you do solo and group art exhibitions. In 2001 and 2001 to 2002, you did the Pantaloon Saloon in Westmont, Illinois, and High Risk Gallery in Chicago. What were those exhibitions like?
Yeah, I think everyone wants to hear about my work around 20 years ago. 19 years ago, I was in a show. No, but that show actually was very interesting because it was the first show I did after returning from Asia. So I thought I knew what I was gonna do with my life, then came back and didn't know what I was gonna do with my life, and did a show with a whole bunch of hometown friends in like an abandoned dental office in this random suburb where after that show happened, so like in the Philippines, one question I asked when I was there, because it's Philippines is pretty nuts, especially if anyone follows Filipino politics. It's super crazy. And I was just asking myself, like, how do you change a society like this? Like, how do you get rid of corruption in this kind of government, right? So I'm thinking that I come back to the United States kind of feeling, I mean, we have our problems, but they are not like the problems of like a third world country where corruption is like from top to bottom. Uh, and a lot of people feel helpless to change it. So I come here, I do that show, I then get a ticket after that show, and I had to go to court and fix the ticket, right? So I get pulled over because the cop says I was blocking an ambulance, which I was not. So I go to court in the suburb, feeling like, oh, I should be able to mete out some justice here. But what happens is they do the like pre-sentencing, and then the judge left for like just for a short recess, say like 10 minutes. And during that 10 minutes, what happens is all the cops that show up that are sitting kind of as witness, they leave that section and then start bullying all the all the people waiting to do their like sentencing or to say guilty or not guilty, whatever, right? Innocent, not innocent. uh, and they just start talking like by each person to like scare and bully everyone. So it was totally terrifying, like coming from this one system and then like getting it firsthand, like corruption firsthand in Westmont, Illinois. Like I was kind of shocked. I was taken aback. And then after they do that, the cops went back, and then the judge comes back for like sentencing and to hear how you plead. So, so that show 19 years ago was just very informative. I think in terms of like my identity and my feelings towards the suburbs, but also towards American policing and the justice system.
It's pretty wild to like having like corrupt systems and like you mentioned like third world countries like Cambodia and the Philippines and stuff and it takes a lot like I saw like Manny Pacquiao be like a government official and it takes a strong man like that to and a strong person whether you're male or female to like be a part of the government officials like that in a third world country. Like kudos to them for sure. Like they're like the real superheroes. Indeed. Most definitely. And so you also in 2002 you were did the cubicle in Hammond, Indiana. What was that like?
I don't know if it was a great show, but it was out of state, so I did it. That's the main thing. And this won't relate to anyone, and no one will know what I'm talking about. But one of my hometown friends was there. His girlfriend was in the show, and I found out that he was related to the famous historical artist Giacometti, which means nothing to anyone, but it was very exciting for me.
For sure, indeed. It,
It totally means that everyone has now completely signed off.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty neat. Like your CV is just so it's so awesome. It's just so like there's so much art in here and stuff.
Because I'm old. It's a history of me trying for over 20 years to make it, but just staying mid level.
Yeah.
I I don't know. Do you like? I do feel like a dark horse, forever unknown, and I think I'm okay with it. I think when I was younger, I was like, no way. Like I'm gonna move to New York. I'm gonna end up at the Whitney. My work's going to be shown at this museum. I'm going to be a Magnum photographer. I'm going to, like, I'm going to get this fellowship. And, you, over a couple decades, I'm like, you know what? Maybe this is me. This might be, I'll keep trying, but I'm not going to be disappointed. Like,
Same here. It's all part of the process, and just trust the process. And that's what I felt
yeah,
like when I was like in LA. I'm like, I don't really want to be like the next Hunter S. Thompson or Clive Barker or anything like that. I just I don't want to. I don't want like. I love being like a chameleon and just like blending in and not standing out as And I'd much rather be like that. And
yeah, and it's like I'll make the best work that I can make, work that I love. Hopefully someone loves it. Hopefully someone sees it, puts me on a show or wants the work. But it's like at the same time, I just want to be proud of the product that I'm putting together. I think that's it. If I'm happy with it, hopefully someone else is. If no one else wants it, I still like it. So take it or leave it. I'm going to stay happy and excited about what I'm making.
indeed, you should be proud and happy because this is like pretty cool stuff. Like I think it's pretty cool stuff. Like for example, like in 2005, you were part of the acting gallery in Chicago, Illinois, and what was that like?
Which one? Acme? The Acme show? Oh man, like a lot of the funny thing or the sad thing, I guess, is that a lot of those spaces closed, like, and now it's more extreme, but a lot of places are closed. And I was really excited to be in those kind of vibrant art spaces in Chicago that, I mean, like you just wanted to be in those shows, you wanted to be a part of those group projects. And like, I love group shows. Like, I don't actually have a desire to do solo shows. I've done only one solo show, but like I love group shows, and the reason I love that and why I love comedy is I like making work, showing work with people that I really like. So that's always very exciting to me. So I love being part of like a crew making stuff that makes people happy.
Indeed, that's what I love being on like showcases and stuff, and being at open
Yeah,
mics. Instead of like having like my own like one man show and stuff like that. It's just in time there'll be a one man show, but for now I'd much rather be on stage and share stages with friends and stuff.
I agree.
Setting and it might like when you said like all those venues closed and stuff, it reminded me of like LA when I like during my journalism days, like when I felt like the Key Club was closing and the House of Blues was closing and all these other venues were closing. It just like it just I felt like Indiana Jones, in the Temple of Doom when the walls were closing
Running
in.
away from the boulder.
Kind of like when the walls were closing in on him, and like he had to
Yeah.
find a way to escape from LA, and like he was a Kurt Russell. Like I felt like that. I'm like I'm getting out of LA. This is like not fun anymore, and that's why like I left everything behind. Like goodbye horror and goodbye like concerts. It's just my
Yeah.
it was just like it broke my heart when all those venues closed. But
Do you
it
think
was
you'll end up back there?
no, no. Like I've seen like everyone like with the exodus of everyone leaving California like during this time because of how expensive it was. It was just like nah. I'd much rather be in Florida with the weirdos. So, like let's have bath salts and just
Oh
party.
gosh.
Let's see people's faces and stuff.
Let's buy a bunch of Lamborghinis and rent them out to people. Those guys,
Yeah, pretty much
guns and Lamborghinis.
live like Scarface.
Oh gosh.
I'm kidding. I'd much rather be one of the Miami Vice guys, anyways. But in 2006, you had like two shows, which was at the Butcher Shop at Dead Tech in Chicago and the Gene Siskel Film Center in Chicago. What were those shows like?
So one venue, Butcher Shop, closed. Gene Siskel was an Asian show. It was an Asian showcase of work. So that's a movie theater, but they'll do shows every once in a while of just visual work. And I generally don't do all Asian shows. I don't know if I like that kind of like pigeonholing, or it's sort of like I'm just an artist. Like, yeah, I'm Asian, but I don't think my work is particularly Asian. But it seemed like a good venue to show work in. It was fine. But one of the things with a lot of the small shows and house shows that I felt I got kind of tired of is that you might get 100 eyeballs on your show, and then you can't show that work again. You know, you're not going to do another small show and show that drawing or painting that you spent 60 hours doing, which I like about comedy, where you can keep refining and then keep tweaking, but showing that work over again. You know, they're like multiple people, and you can get way more people seeing the work than you can with these just small art shows, you know? Um, so I think that's, yeah, '06 through whatever, all those little shows, it's sort of like the work came and went, and that's it. No one wants to see it again.
Indeed, I feel you on the whole all Asian show thing. I mean, like I'm part of the Crazy Book Asians, but there's other folks that are like not Asian that are on the show, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. And I totally get where you're coming from, and because like you don't want to be pigeonholed in that sense, because then they'll just think you're that all the time. And like when people find out that I don't really watch anime and do the Pokemon Go stuff, they're like, "Are you really Asian?"
Oh
I'm like,
god.
I'm pretty much a banana. I'm pretty much like yellow on the outside, white on the inside. I mean, I don't really do anime and Pokemon Go or any of that stuff. And they're like, "Wow, you're totally different." And plus, I'm really bad at math too. But uh, we'll say that for a rainy day.
Nice.
So in 2007, you were part of the Roots and Culture in Chicago, Illinois too. What can you remember from that exhibit?
Yeah. Everyone, just to let you know, quick update. We're gonna go through my whole CV, so hang in there. This is over 20 years of work. But 2007 Roots. My son was born the year before, so it was really hard to make work, and there are some giant gaps between like just gaps of like not making work. '07 was nice because my kid was not necessarily a baby anymore, was ambulatory, and uh, was able to just be in like some of my artwork. So that's when I started doing more video pieces because it was too hard to do large drawings or large paintings in my living room with a kid that's running around, like moving around, you know? So I started like focusing more on video and work that exists inside of a computer where a kid can't get it. So that's kind of the importance of 2007 is the year that I decided to focus on video. But also, I was going to apply to film school. And so I was working on pieces to submit to schools in New York and LA. And that's when I had my panic attack because I was going to have a child. So we're trying to figure that out. And I just ultimately decided not to apply. So I have all these packets with all my applications to film schools and just decided I don't think I could pull this off. And, in order to do that, I was like, am I going to move my whole family wherever I get in? Hopefully NYU. But my wife is like, no, no, you would just fly back and forth. We'll just do that. And I'm like, that sounds impossible. I'm sure there are people that could do it and better people than me, stronger people than me, but I couldn't see myself flying back and forth from school every weekend to
And
like see my child grow up.
most definitely. Now it's easy because everything's locked down. You can probably go to NYU online and
Oh, totally. Yeah.
it's so much easier for sure. But yeah, I love like after leaving Colorado for LA and then coming back home again, it just felt much. It was more fulfilling being back at home because you're more involved with the community and everyone knows you. And
Yeah.
being like a lonely person in a place full of millions, it was just too lonely. And much rather build the scene back home than anywhere else. And
Yeah. I mean, I love that about the comedy scene. Like, one thing that I definitely needed to do, and the thing that I loved about teaching is that like every 4 years you're meeting like a whole new set of people, right? Like And after a 4-year cycle, it's all new people, right? So it's like every year you meet new people for a class, and then but then you cycle through the whole school is new every four. You refresh everything, and I love meeting new people and like seeing sort of the zeitgeist change, language evolve, thinking and sort of like the ethos of a group change. I love that. And so I needed to find more of that, and so I got into the comedy scene, and it's just like I want to meet like a whole bunch of new people that are making stuff, that are fun, that are creating, and creative. And it's like really nice to make other stuff with this whole crew of people that are down kind of to do anything. Uh, and it's always changing too. I don't know if your scene is changes really fast, but in Chicago, the scene changes so quickly because everyone's moving to LA or New York. We're a transition city, so it's sort of like while people are here, they're really experimenting, and so you meet a lot of weirdos, and it is fun. And
And
it's low. I mean, for me at least, especially, I'm not moving, so it's low pressure generally in terms of like, I can experiment and not be afraid of like being too weird or like being completely off. Like no one's seeing me. Like no one at NBC is like here just hanging out. Unless there are auditions or something. It's got to be something very specific. So I think that's what makes the scene really fun is that people are able to experiment and mess around without necessarily ruining their potential career. Like you've got to get it together if you're moving to LA or New York, but here and even in the art scene, like I'll show with people that have been at like have shown in the Whitney, have shown like done all these things, won these awards, but it's so low key here because this is just like a testing ground.
yep, most definitely. And being, that 4-year cycle all the time, it's like, seeing new people, it makes you feel like a guidance counselor telling them to go to community college. It's like a high school. So it's like
And we've circled back. We've
absolutely
circled back to our community college connections.
indeed. And so we have and in 2008 you returned to Dead Tech in Chicago, and you also did the Roots and Culture exhibit in Chicago. What were those like?
2008. 2008, about to have my second child. We're about to have our second child. I didn't have it. We had it. So more stress at that point, and one Dead Tech completely closed. Roots and Culture, I think, still around and kind of a fun venue. Also, like a food venue. So it's like one of those, right? It's like food and art. So I don't know. I don't even remember what I did for that show.
Oh, for
What
sure.
what did I even write in my CV? Maybe I lied. Maybe I haven't done any of this.
It's all an illusion. It's the Mandela effect.
Yeah,
So,
you know how people will say I opened for this person, but really they were just on a lineup. Like
yeah,
so, or I
pretty
wrote for a show, but really they just did something adjacent to X show. I don't know.
much. Indeed, but I believe it because this looks really organized. So,
Oh, 08 was kind of a big year. I think that was the year that I applied for that or auditioned for that game show or that reality TV show. So '08 was actually a pretty big year for me. I was really trying to. I felt like my art career was doing all right. Like I was doing a lot of shows, uh, meeting a lot of people, and I was trying to make a big break for it. But then my second child arrived, and it was all the dreams were dashed.
now you're working on their dreams, and the cool thing is like they're close in age, and so they can grow up together and all that good stuff. So that's good
Yeah,
stuff. Most definitely. That's how I am with my sister. Like we're like close in age, and so it's like we can grow up together, but we're real apart because like we're totally different people. But it happens. We're polar opposites. But
yeah.
in 2009, we're also in two exhibits: the Harold Washington College in Chicago and the Coke Prosperity Sphere in Chicago. What do you remember from those exhibits?
Though, so that was the year I started doing more like performance art, and I was trying to put together performance and sculpture and trying to get all of that. So I don't know, that was a hard year to for me to make work because it was a lot of coordinating artists and people's schedules, but that was the year that I started trying to do that. So I was getting away from I was doing video, but I was also like experimenting a lot with dance too and getting dancers together and putting them in sculptures and it was fun, but it was so hard. I remember it being really stressful. And after doing a lot of these dance related art pieces, I just remember not wanting to do that anymore. Really not wanting to coordinate that stuff. So, like practices and just the amount of scheduling for especially like young people was so hard.
Most definitely. Indeed. And in 2010, you did two more exhibits in the same year, which was the Catherine Clark Gallery in San Francisco and the Ruth Page Center for the Arts in Chicago. What was it like to being, on the West Coast and being in Chicago and such?
Yeah, so San Francisco, like Catherine Clark Gallery, that was kind of a dream. Like I had been wanting to like show in that space. It was on my bucket list, and I tried to make a piece that I thought was going to be cheap that I could just send there, and it ended up costing me a couple $1,000s to make this sculpture. And I mean, I thought it would like get me in, and they'd want me to show more work at the gallery, but after that, it just went radio silent. So it wasn't as big a success as I thought it would be. I was really hoping that it would be, but no, that didn't quite happen. And Ruth Page was another dance piece, and it was fun, but that was sort of I think that was the end of me doing dance stuff. So
Indeed. A couple $1,000, like in the words of Chris Rock. Good Lord, that's a lot of money.
that's a lot of money. It was too much. And so I ended up having to sell like a lot of artwork to sort of cover the cost of doing that show. I was like, everyone, I have all this artwork that I really like that I did not want to sell, but I gotta sell it. Like I gotta kind of, you know, get the difference of this piece. I had this like gigantic printer. I made the print. It was just a whole ordeal.
Most
It was not the way I wanted to spend that money, but whatever. A bucket list, right?
Indeed, it's totally worth it for sure. And in 2011, you were at the Cobalt Studio in Chicago, and you returned to the Prosperity Institute in Chicago. What were those exhibits like?
So I think one of them, Cobalt. I don't remember what that show is at all. I do not remember if it was good, but Co-Prosperity was a pinata show, and that was just like this crazy art pinata show where you made these elaborate sculptures, and the pinatas were full of like really weird stuff. I remember someone made a giant Titanic, like a replica of the Titanic, really detailed, that you just smashed, and inside was it full of like little ships? I can't remember, but people made these amazing pieces. I did an AC unit, like a window AC unit from the 90s, and inside I put cockroaches and wax ice cubes that I made, and so that just ruined the floor. Like that wax was impossible to to get off. Yeah, like that was a fun show. Those are really good.
Awesome. And in 2012, you did the Happy Dog in Chicago, Illinois. And what was that like?
That was a pagan art show. So I just made like fake occult sculptures, which was really great. It was good. It was a former student of mine who runs Hoofprint out here, and it's a printing lab. You silk screening, amazing printers, and they put that show together. So, and that space also closed.
Oh my goodness, all these closed
Yeah,
exhibits.
I'm cursed. I'm a curse. So put me on your show. Put me on your Asian shows. They will for sure close down. Comedy closed it down.
And like it's like the ring, like 7 days. It's like
7 days. I will destroy everything that you have put all your blood and sweat and tears in.
and in 2015, you were in the outhouse, Urbana, I believe is what pronounced, or Urbana, in
I
Champaign.
like the way you say it.
What was that like?
That was by U of I, and it was just a solo show for a space that my friend ran in his backyard. And it was the first time I actually did a solo show of photography, which was great for me. I loved it. I invited a whole bunch of former students. They showed up. It happened to be parents' weekend, so a lot of parents were visiting their kids at U of I, and so it was a chance for me to see those students again, say hi, and forget their names in front of their parents. So that was great and also horrifying. It
and
was great and embarrassing to say hi for parents to be like, this guy does not remember who my kid is.
that's the rough one for sure.
So embarrassing. Yeah, even though it's like, oh, I really enjoyed this kid. Oh crap. Too
It's like
many kids from different years. This is a nightmare.
for sure. But I'm glad you were there to be a teacher for 13 years, and it's really hard to like with names and stuff like that. And but it's like that with like in life in general. In 2016, you were part of the exhibit at the Franklin in Chicago. What was that like?
The Franklin is my friend's house, and she's an amazing artist, someone that I've known for 20 years. And she did this show based on a cop that killed someone out here. And so it was a show all based on that. And I mean, that show was also pretty crazy because I was in Michigan at the time. And so it was like a 4 hour drive to get to the opening of the show and then a 4 hour drive back because my family was in Michigan. So that ended up being pretty wild, a pretty wild journey, and just like a small art show in a backyard, which was a pleasure.
Eh,
So, and I love
Sometimes
that.
those shows that are like that are pretty awesome. Those unorthodox style shows. I
Yeah,
love
and
it.
it's like having been in the art scene for a long time, I don't know a lot of the younger artists, so it was like people my age. So it's like a very different kind of art crew. Like it's like people in their 30s and 40s, and it's like people that have established making work for a long time, and it's just it's like comfortable, but it's also like, wow, we have been making work for 20 years. Look how old we are, you
Indeed.
know.
Most definitely. And so you were part of three exhibits in 2017. The defibrillator. I'm really bad with big words. I like to
No,
keep
I go for it.
it indeed in Chicago, and produce model in Chicago and Intuit in Chicago. What were those shows like? Like
Yeah, I mean, it's just more like sort of video performative shows. So just weird ones. The best one was probably the Intuit show because it was video and then my friends doing live music to accompany the video pieces. So that one was, I don't know, it was fun. But not again, it's like a show where maybe 60 people come out and then it's done. That show's forever gone. That work is has disappeared.
most
You know.
definitely. And you in 2018 you were part of the MoCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. What was that like for that exhibit?
So that one, I feel like that was the comedy show. We talked about that, right? So yeah, that was just like that was an art. comedy and performance shows. So it's performative art. So it's like doing comedy after someone does a weird yoga performance. You know, one of those, like a variety show, but artsier. So that means kind of quiet
Indeed.
in a venue that costs too much. You know.
For sure. There's a Moke in LA too, and so that was like very beautiful place for sure.
Did you
Indeed.
do comedy shows there at
Um, I
Mocha?
I don't think so. I never I've seen the exhibits there, but I've never seen like a comedy show there. But they should totally put a comedy show in
That
Moke.
space is huge. I love that space. It's like a big warehouse, right? And then yeah,
Big time for sure. And then last year, you were also a part of the Gallery 400 and the Compound Yellow Oak in Yellow Oak Park or Oak Park. What were those exhibits like?
yeah. Compound Yellow was a solo show, not photography. It was just like a weird collection of the things you own. So kind of a strange archive of like things I've collected over forever. And 5 people came out to that show. 5 people came out to see this show, to see this work that took me forever to set up. It took me like, I don't know, however long it took to like put that show together. So it looked beautiful. You can see it on my website, but it was also kind of a giant disappointment in terms of where people that get, because it was cold and it was rainy and no one wanted to come out to this thing. And most of my friends live in Chicago. This was about 30 minutes away in the suburbs, and it was just very hard to get people to come out to that one, unfortunately. But I still love the producers and the coordinator, but I can't say it was a great success.
For
But I have pictures of it that look pretty good. So what can you do?
Indeed, and from 2002 to 2015, we're coming back to your teaching days, and you taught at you were the visual arts teacher at the Northside College Preparatory High School, and this description that you wrote on your website was you taught photography, graphic design, sculpture, painting, drawing, video, multimedia construction, animation theory. In addition to teaching standard art courses, you created semester-long thematic classes. I'm really bad with these. I think it's because English is my second language, but such as using explosives as a means for creating drawings, scientific approaches to making art, teaching after the apocalypse, reclaiming lost childhoods, approaches to sewage management, video construction as a game of chance, and the intersection between dinosaurs and rock and roll. That sounds like a whole lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
what are those teaching years like to you?
Teaching was the greatest and hardest job I've ever had. It's teaching anyone that teaches is my hero, especially if you've been teaching for over a decade. Like it is very, very difficult, but it was so fun. Like the school that I taught at was kind of an experimental educational institution in some ways. Like it was meant to be a fine arts school, but then, it's selective enrollment. So you had gifted kids coming from all over the city, some kids taking 2 hours to get to the school. And you just kind of had this amazing, intellectually stimulating place. So I feel like what that did was it forced me to have to like step up to that and to have to produce, be excited, constantly research, constantly grow as a person to be able to deliver, and to deliver new stuff. And I mean, part of, I think part of the reason why I left teaching is that I felt like I didn't quite have the time or energy anymore to be able to research and do what I needed to do to be the best teacher that I needed to be, at least according to myself. I put that pressure on myself, but like I always put pressure on myself to reinvent each year. And I also taught like 2 new classes every year. So on top of like my standard classes, I always did like two special topics, which was like the special feature of the school, and which I hear is a lot like Stuyvesant in New York. But you know, in order to do that, just required more and more time that I just had a hard time finding with like having two kids. So yeah, I think in order to be a good teacher, a great teacher, it just takes a certain amount of time, a special person, and a lot of energy, you know? So, and with art, like, art is constantly changing. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to like explore what was happening in photography because I taught that, graphic design, multimedia, general art. So that's painting, drawing, sculpture, performance, and then like I liked to try to do research on like new music, what memes are happening, and so like on Friday, I found that the only time I really had was on Friday nights, where I would stay up till like my family would go to bed, and then I'd stay up till like 5 or 6 in the morning, trying to just research, see what kids are watching, see what's like emerging, what the zeitgeist is now, you know, like trying to keep up. And I just found that I couldn't do that as much as I wanted to anymore. So I was like, I either have to do a couple things to stay teaching. I either have to like teach the same thing year to year and change very slowly, which just sounds boring to me. Like I didn't want to get bored. So like I said, I like to reinvent. So I just made the decision. I think I have to leave, or else I'm just not going to be as exciting as I want to be. So
Indeed. Once the love is there, and it's just comes in peaks and valleys for sure. It's
yeah,
there.
like you've seen like a teacher that's just kind of like burnt out, doesn't care anymore, and is just kind of over it, but just doing it because it's the job. And then you have teachers that are excited. I wanted to leave like excited, full of energy, really happy with what I've produced, instead of like leaving really disappointed and bitter. Like I don't think that would have served anyone.
Indeed. Go out like Peyton Manning and
Yeah.
like my teacher was like, I remember like going back to my social studies teacher, like when he was like really upset, being like a because he put in so many years, and he ended up having like alcohol in his desk. So cause, like you could
Really?
always,
Truly?
yeah, you could smell the alcohol in his breath like during
Wow.
fifth periods.
That's
I'm
so
glad,
sad.
yeah, I'm glad you didn't end up like that for sure.
No, I did have something in my drawers though, which was a giant bag of fireworks. I had very flammable stuff in my desk.
Oh man, that's good stuff. Just
which
in case you
luckily
had to just chuck
which
out.
luckily never got me in trouble, but
Good stuff. And we covered in 2018, 2019. We covered this earlier, which was Omnarchy, and so you were the contributing writer and illustrator for the satirical featurized news stand-up for Omnarchy. So that's pretty cool. You got to be the illustrator and the contributing writer to that. So
yeah, and the thing about Omnarchy too is my former student started it, and I met his boyfriend at a writing class at Second City. It's like the Onion writing class, and so then we ended up connecting, and he ended up becoming my boss. So
wow, that's pretty cool how everything comes back full
yeah,
circle.
I love it. It's such a great story. It's
It,
so great. It was very exciting.
and the Onion is a pretty big deal out in Chicago, so I'm glad that they have their headquarters out there. So it's pretty neat.
Are
And
they? Yeah, 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 yeah.
and Second City too. So like a lot of great talent came out of that place for sure.
Yeah.
So you also were part of the cover feature in the Chicago Reader on March 11th, 2020. What was that series like?
So we've gone through my whole career now, 19 years, which comes to like this is apogee. Would this be the apogee? Is that the top of the curve?
I believe so. We're coming. Yep. And then we have like one more set of series, and we'll go to the
Yeah, yeah.
all that good stuff.
So we're there. This is the height. This is the height of my career. Everything I've been working for, I end up on in a cover article for the Chicago Reader on the work that I'm doing in March, and then all of Chicago society collapsed immediately after. So I, I did a comedy absolutely stopped because
Now,
March, like I think the quarantine started like March 14th. So that issue came out March 11th, and every society here came to a stop. So there you go, everyone. Full circle. I started my career basically after 9/11 in 2001. I moved to Asia like a week after 9/11, and then I ended my career with a pandemic in 2020. So how's that? How's that, Sarah?
pretty interesting stuff. Sure.
It's not good. I really do feel like a curse. I may be cursing the entire world. Uh,
Everything comes back full circle.
Full circle,
Indeed.
man.
Yeah, in 2017, we're covering your stand-up days now and years in Dahlia Hall or Talia Hall. What was that show like?
So that was Kyle Kinane, opening for Kyle Kinane, and that was just amazing. That's like a dream show. It's a dream space. It's an amazing space for comedy, and I mean I'll never forget that. That's probably the height of anything performatively that I've done. And like I'll always remember how that stage feels, and like how the sound bounces back at you. And the first time you hear like a big laugh in a crowd like that. So I think it's like an 800-person venue, I think. And so once you get that big laugh from like 800 people, I mean that totally stays with you.
Oh yeah, most definitely. That's pretty rad.
Yeah, yeah.
In 2000,
Unforgettable.
indeed, that's pretty neat for like just to see like 800 laugh, like people laugh. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and like from 800 people that don't owe you anything and don't know you at all, to know that like something that you wrote or made actually connected is was really nice. Because sometimes you know how like a lot of times you just don't know. You're just sitting there like, gosh, I don't know. I don't know if this works or has any value whatsoever. And
And
then other people agree that this had value, at least for that moment.
most definitely. And so in 2018, you were part of four productions. The first one was the Beat Kitchen at the Chicago Underground Comedy. What was that like?
I mean, that's also one of those dream shows to do. And I did a very weird performative bit. It's kind of a show where you can experiment, but, but I can confidently say I bombed that show, and they haven't had me back since. But I'm glad I did it.
Indeed.
I'm glad I did that important show and bombed. So
in part of like your earlier bio earlier in the series or the on the Speakeasy, we spoke of the apartment and house comedy tour, and for the first time you produced 6 shows for that. What was those first 6 shows like?
the first 6 shows, I just wanted to see if I could, number one, produce a show, and number two, if I could host a show. And I found out that hosting a show very hard.
And
Keeping that moment. I mean, that one was like I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about the patience of an audience and the patience of comics. So luckily, people that were on those shows are still my friends. But wow. Second time, the second tour went a lot better, and the third one felt a lot better, even though the up and down was basically if people showed up or not. But people came to those shows, they're really good. There was a blizzard that almost shot down the show, but people still came out during a blizzard. So you can't ask for anything more, right?
Right, exactly. And in 2008, you also returned to Talia Hall or Thalia Hall in 2018. What was that second show like for you?
So second show, I felt a lot better about that. That was Kyle again, and like I at least knew how the space felt. That wasn't a mystery. That was the thing freaking me out was like, how does it sound? How does it feel? And when you know that already, there's a lot more comfort. And plus, I had been performing a lot more, doing a whole bunch more shows. So I felt a lot more confident. And I felt like, and then the challenge the year before was like, okay, so I did that show, Natalia, let's write all new material and see if I can have like a new at least 10 minutes, and see if that works and if I can get something like that together, right? And so that was the challenge, and it was fun. It went well, but there's nothing like doing a big show where one of your bits really just doesn't connect and you have to like dig yourself out of it. So there was a moment and I was like, all right, let's just see, and I was a lot more comfortable with that. So it's sort of like, okay, I tried that little thing that I didn't know was going to work or not. And then you just dig yourself out of it. So
Indeed. And so, we talked about the Queen City Festival in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and how they took all their money that they raised and helped charity out. And when we messaged each other before the whole stand up speakeasy, I asked if you'd like to raise funds for yourself, but you chose to raise funds for these three organizations, which is the International Rescue Committee, Eric Holder's NDRC, and Chicago's Night Ministry. So
yeah,
um, what made you pick those organizations to raise funds for our interview?
I
And
love these organizations. So the NDRC, or NRDC, is a national redistricting Democratic Committee. So basically, it's Eric Holder, the former AG, and he's fighting against gerrymandering. So that redistricting rules and gerrymandering, I really feel like is a huge part of like the Democratic decline. So with both parties, but I mean, what the Republican Party is doing right now is so scary. And I love that there's a group using their muscle expertise to fight and litigate against that. And then the IRC works with refugees and international crises. Uh, and I love their work, and I feel like that's a forever ongoing issue internationally that affects all of us, whether we see refugees or not. And again, people using their expertise to deal with those issues when it might be hard for us to understand or do that. We can at least contribute, to that cause and help the helpless. Like that's something that I feel like is something that we constantly have to do in terms of like saving humanity. You know what I mean? And then more locally in Chicago, there's the Night Ministry, which one of the things they do is they have these trucks that drive around at night where they provide health care, they provide, like mental services, psychological treatment, food, and needs for the homeless. They also operate a shelter for homeless youth, and I really like what they do. They've been operating for decades, and the organization is just such a great um, physical, hands-on approach to working with the homeless community in Chicago, which is exacerbated by what's happening now. So any of those organizations, I think, are really great to contribute to, and if people do that, more important than comedy.
indeed, and the links are on the bottom of this video on the description box. So feel free to click on them and donate to those causes, and that'd be awesome of you. And thank you for raising awareness for those organizations too, Chris. That's pretty awesome of you too.
Yeah.
In 2019, You were part of three shows. You produced nine more shows for the Apartment and House Comedy Tour. Uh, what were those nine shows like?
So one of those shows, kind of a bomb. No one showed up. Felt really bad. A whole bunch of comics that I really like. Most of the show's pretty good, but the last show of that series was just kind of amazing, like an amazing closeout. And it was 3 floors in one apartment, and the show ended up being like over 4 hours long, and people stayed. That generally you don't really want to go over like an hour and a half, but it went 4 hours, and it was super fun. Like one of the craziest shows. Um, because it was one apartment building and we did 3 floors, so we just moved from the bottom and then moved everyone to each show and made it like a new show each time. So new lineups, and it was great.
Man, that sounds pretty legendary right there.
It was legendary for sure. So
Indeed.
sweaty, and then the last show at the top floor, just I had to apologize to the owners because it smelled so bad.
Heat rises to the top, I guess.
Oh my gosh, it smelled so awful. I was like, you might have to buy a new couch, man. Everyone is sweating so hard.
Indeed. I can only imagine. So,
Yeah.
in Oak City Comedy Festival, we talked about that too, in Raleigh, and so we'll go to the next one, which was the Sleeping Village of Cards Against Humanity. What was that like?
Yeah, Cards Against Humanity, they do a show where they just do a live uh, improvised game. So, you read a white card, black card, and then there's like there's commentary on it. And I mean that show was so fun. And I don't I mean obviously those shows aren't gonna happen for a while, but I mean it was just like it was a fun thing to do, something I hadn't done before, which was just doing stand up and then riffing on improv and videos. So like part Mystery Science Theater 3000, part riff tracks or whatever, and then also just stand up and improv. It's really fun.
Most definitely. And then you also in this year you produced six shows for the Apartment and House Comedy Tour. What
Mhm.
were those shows like?
Yeah. So everyone, if you don't know at this point, I produce house comedy shows. I'm just kidding. Do you think anyone has stayed with us for this whole journey? I feel like we've done like an epic Lord of the Rings trilogy of my life. It's pretty exciting.
I
I'm
think so
pretty excited.
too. Like taking a trip down memory lane. I feel like Joe Rogan at this moment because like usually like my interviews last from 30, 20 minutes to an hour, and now we're like at the 2 hour, over 2 hours, which is fantastic. Like
No,
I'm so thankful that you like we're still talking and doing these things and like
I love it. I think the way people are feeling at this point is how they felt when they first watched John Wick 3. I think that's the excitement that we've produced in terms of my unknown career. No, but the last show we did was so good, and it was for a former student of mine who had just purchased a giant house and was doing very well financially. But a lot of their friends were like in finance and from business school. So the crowd was all these like young corporate professionals, young corporate people. And so the vibe of it, I was just like really scared because if you listen to the conversations and the things people were talking about, they were talking about like estimates on like a certain deal or like a presentation they have to do to XYZ or moving up the corporate ladder. Like these conversations were so fascinating, and then you're just like, is my comedy gonna work here? Like I have no idea. Like that's one of the exciting things about the house shows is that every owner has to invite their own friends. So I mean, it's sort of contingent on them being very proactive on bringing a crowd. And the only request is that they try to pack the show. So obviously we're not going to do that show this year, but like people, I tell people like, if you can pack your house with like 30 people, we're going to have a good show. Like it's going to be uncomfortable and that's what we want. Like we want the comics to be like up against the crowd, you know? So that's it. It's just like pack the show and that's all we ask. Like you don't have to pay for the show, nothing. If people want to donate, cool. If not, I will pay them. But like that last show was corporate and it was a total riot because they were insane. So, and the comics ripped on them so hard and they loved it. So we were like, man, you can't you can't ask for better than that. And that was the closer. So the closers generally have been pretty good. Like I felt very proud of that one.
Man, that's pretty awesome. With all those like, all those people in like the corporate like field and like the financial stuff, it kind of reminds me of like American Psycho and like, Christian Bale and stuff like that.
Oh
Those
yeah.
kind of people. It's like, wow, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
But I'm glad
Yeah.
they had a good time though, for sure. Indeed. And so for this segment, I was hoping to go on tour before COVID hit in 2020 and just like travel the whole central time zone and interview comics. And this usually like takes about 10 to 20 minutes. And so these
Uh-huh.
are like set questions I have for every comic that I run into.
So this is another 2 hours for us now. We're gonna do
Indeed.
it. We're
So
gonna break the internet with this one.
we are indeed, but fortunately for like YouTube, I can put timestamps so people can like watch all that part and like click on the timestamp and go
So
fast
they
forward.
can look at the unboxing. We're gonna do our unboxing video next. We unboxing and then a review of another product. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. This is our show, like our show box and stuff. So it's pretty neat. So, um, but our soapbox, if you will. There you go. So, but yeah, this is so what inspired you to perform stand up comedy?
Oh, that's a good question. I think so. One of the things like teaching, I feel like as a high school teacher, it is very performative. At least I felt like it was. You're sort of the character of yourself, like you're you sort of become something else. You have to improvise a lot. And then, like, I don't have a very strong voice. Like, it just runs out, and you're sort of like having to project all day. So I actually started using a microphone and a portable speaker to teach, and I would do tours around the school and just sort of to amplify, but also just as like sort of a fun way of doing it. I felt like it got kids' attention a little bit better, and the classes were huge. Like some of the classes were over 30 kids. So having a microphone, and I heard that like some teachers did it for little kids, and that it was a better way of conveying information. So I started doing that, and then it made me feel like, oh, like I think I'd like to perform. It feels very performative now with a microphone. And then I did. I went to a moth show. Do you know the moth?
Yep.
It's like a storytelling show, right? So I went to one. My friend gave me a ticket, and then they had an open call. So I did. I ended up signing up and doing it and doing one, and like people laughed, and it was a good time, and I just felt like, oh, I kind of love this. But too hard to like do comedy while I was teaching, just because I went to bed at like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then you're up at 5 getting kids ready. So I just, comedy is like all at night, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't get myself to stay out late. And so once I left teaching, is when I started to go into it. So that gave me the chance to try. So
Indeed. What was the feeling like when you first performed stand up?
the show that I did,
Yeah, the first time ever.
oh, so that one was uncomfortable. It was at this place called Comedy Sports, and there was someone who was leaving town, leaving Chicago, and so she was videotaping like everyone that went up at this mic that I did, and I was like, I'm just doing this for the first time. Like, I don't want a video, but it totally threw me off. And so that was my first experience with it. That I just couldn't stop staring at this phone and like feeling it on me, you know. And she was standing, so I just like, oh, I can't. I'm leaving Chicago, and here are comics, you know. And it's like, I don't know if I want this recorded.
Indeed, it's like TMZ or the paparazzi out in LA. It's like, get out of here.
Yeah, but I remember that first night, Jabuki Young White was also at that mic, and I was like, who is this kid? This kid is amazing. And then soon left Chicago and then became a correspondent, you know? So I was like, wow.
Yes, stand up
Kind
is
of,
wild. It leads you to the most awesome places. So it's
yeah.
indeed. And then, what are your favorite comedy specials and comedy record albums?
Favorite comedy specials. I'm really liking, I like Whitmer Thomas's The Golden One. Have you checked that out on
Not yet.
HBO?
Hopefully,
Man, that one's just like there's something about it, like the heart of it and how personal it is. But then it's like him doing music and then doing it at a venue that his mother, who passed away, used to perform at. There's just like all this stuff mixed together. And then I really enjoyed Gary Goldman's new one about his stuff. But like Nate Bargatze, uh, Yelled at by a Clown, he loves so much. Rory Scovel, like anything Rory Scovel does is just sort of magical. And like he came through town, did 4 shows at Lincoln Lodge, and the whole so it's sort of like a special that'll never be seen, but the whole goal of it was to do unscripted sets. So he didn't come in with like a set list. He just came in, did 4 shows that were completely different. I only got to see one, but I think I saw day 2 or day 3, and it sort of became a culmination of like all the other shows that he was doing. So that is amazing. I'm going to consider that a special. And wow, so Scomo, I don't know if you've ever seen Nick Vatterott, but Nick Vatterott, I am really attracted to all the weirdest. Like whoever's doing something really strange and just like the closer it gets to like chaos and like metal, you know, like if it gets there, like I kind of am in love with it. Julio Torres's special, which is just like favorite shapes, which is so bonkers and weird and over the top. Totally love that, and I'm probably forgetting a whole bunch. Anything I don't know. Todd Barry's done. Those are always just so solid, so good, so strangely comforting. Uh,
for sure. Most
I think I could just keep going through a list, you know, of like everything I love about what people are making. Joe Firestone's special, uh, her like bringing on the hits or whatever, like greatest hits album is completely amazing. It's probably one of my favorite things ever.
indeed awesome stuff. And some of those folks have been on TV and film, and I want to know what your favorite sitcoms, sketch shows, and comedy films are.
Okay, sitcoms. Oh my gosh. Uh, what TV do I watch these days? What have I watched? I think in terms of sitcoms, I do really enjoy Community, and I enjoy it. I think most through the eyes of my son, who's obsessed with it. So I'm constantly hearing it in the background, but it's sort of like how NPR is on in our house all the time. There's also sort of this background of like Community, and I think that makes it very special to me. It's like, oh, this is like the thing, like it really strikes a chord with my son. The theme song is constantly being hummed around the house, and so there's something very nostalgic about that show to me, more than any other show. You said sitcoms,
Sketch
sketch
shows.
shows, sketch shows. Mr. Show is great. Oh, uh, I cannot think of any sketch shows off the top of my head that I like truly, truly love. I'm drawing a blank. I'm drawing a total blank. Wait, what do you love? Maybe that'll stir sketch
I'm
shows.
totally old school. Like I love In Living Color and I love Chappelle's show.
Dang, you
And
are old school.
yeah, they
Can
just
I say in living color? Does that make me sound really cool?
yeah, absolutely. 'Cause, like they push the envelope so far, and they can't get away with it nowadays because of like the
Yeah,
cancel
yeah, yeah.
culture. But that's what I love the best. Like when you have like Men on Film, and you have like like Handyman and stuff like that. It's just like they push so many buttons, and like Fire Marshal Bill, and it was just fantastic. And with like
Yeah.
Chappelle's show too, with like the race car draft, with like the Wu Tang Clan on the sketches and stuff like that. It was just the black white supremacists and stuff like that. It's just all those sketches were just fantastic.
Like,
So
would you consider Eric Andre is kind of a sketch show, right? Like, I mean, is that a sketch show or is that a variety show?
I'd say all of the above because he's just like I love the way like he treats his guests on that show.
Yeah, see, like if
Fantastic.
I was to say a favorite, like I said, that's the thing that moves closest to just complete chaos. And I love that show. Even though I say I love it, but I can only watch so much at a time. It's like it beats you over the head so hard that you're just like, whoa, I need a rest. Like this is so much. But I mean, I enjoy it, so much. So I don't know. Maybe I'll say that.
Most definitely. And there's some viewers in the audience, so if you'd like to jump in the comments and ask us questions, we're more than happy to answer them for you. But be nice to us.
No, don't be. Be internet.
Be internet for sure.
Summon your greatest internet self.
Indeed. So, how about comedy films? What are your favorite comedy films?
Oh, every Adam Sandler film, every mall cop movie. I don't know. I say that jokingly, but you know what? I could get into them. I don't know. I could be down. No, those are not my favorite. But we did just recently watch the newest Adam Sandler movie about. Wait, no, no, no. We watched 50 First Dates, not the newest. And I was like, this is every Adam Sandler movie. And I get it. I think it's candy. It's just sort of like it's a known. You know what you're gonna get. There aren't gonna be any surprises. But I'm trying to think of like what my favorite comedy. I probably should have thought of this beforehand because like my favorite things. I like Cabin in the Woods. I think Cabin in the Woods is like one of my favorite comedies. Evil Dead, like Ash vs. Evil Dead, definitely there. The movie and the TV show. Have you seen the show, the TV show?
A couple of episodes. Yep.
I think that's like also one of my favorite. So like I like horror combos, horror comedy combos the most. Like, but those are definitely up there in
Most,
terms of like. And then like my favorite comedy horror movie is Waxwork 2.
oh, you've never seen it.
It's so awful, but like so great. So I
Indeed.
recommend it. Find it on VHS, everyone.
Most definitely, for sure. If you can go on tour with any comedian, locally and internationally known, which comedians would
Oh
you go on tour with?
wow, Nate Bargatze for sure. Rory Scovel if he'll have me. I wouldn't mind being on Conan and Friends. That'd be great. If Whitney Cummings really enjoys my work, please, Joe Firestone, I'll do any show or work for you. Anna Fabrega, definitely. Jamie Loftus, please. Julio Torres. Yeah.
And,
Does that sound good? Like I would work with any of those people if they'd have me. I would intern for any of them and just do background stuff. So look
heck,
at my CV. We've talked about my CV. So if you want a running commentary on every single thing that I've done, you may have to also support me and my family. So let's make it good.
indeed, adopt us Asian folks
Yes,
for 25
Sareth and I,
cents a day.
we work together now, so we're a package.
Indeed,
Asians in comedy. I don't like the label, but if you need to have that to sell us, put it on.
absolutely. How about local comics that you'd go on tour with?
I would go on tour with Abe Rabinowitz, Hari Rao. I love Brandon Kirkman. I would go with Deanna Ortiz. Who else? Meredith Cashel, if she wants to put together a giant show. Aaron Klopfer, Andrew Shanklin, Drew Brown, he's out in LA now. Mitch Cavieapili, so funny. So many funny people. There's so many. Kelsey Huff, love Kelsey Huff. If Kelsey Huff loved me, that would be great. Uh, I'm trying to rattle off every name. Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Friday night, Wednesday night. Lily and Charlie would definitely do that, or with the band Muka Paza, that would be great. Uh, well, are you trying to do a speed round? Tyler Jackson in LA now, but man, if Tyler Jackson wanted me to be a producer with him, I would totally do that. Who else?
There's so much great talent in Chicago. It's amazing. And
Yeah, there's so many people, and I'm missing a ton of people. I know I don't. I don't know. I can't. There's too many names, too many people that I really love. I would tour. I would pretty much tour with anyone. Anyone that would have me. Let's do it.
most definitely. And if you can get roasted by five comedians, past and present, which ones would you like to get roasted by?
To get roasted by past and present. Wow. Lenny Bruce. That would be amazing. And I think it would be like really painful, you know.
Indeed. And four more.
And what?
Four more.
Oh, four more people. Uh, I I think so. Lenny Bruce. Um, oh, Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks would be so great just to meet Mel Brooks and Charlie Chaplin. Is that good? Has anyone said Charlie Chaplin?
Not
But
you.
like through a silent film. That
That'd
would
be
be amazing. That's all like a rip on me. Like it's a roast about me, but it's like Charlie Chaplin. That would be really good. And uh, I think a really good one would be Ron Funches.
awesome combo there you got. And where do you see your comedy career in the next 5 years?
Uh, my comedy career, I think, is moving more towards video work, scripted stuff, and I don't know if it will be stand up. I feel like stand up might require more touring to really make it like semi viable, you know? And I don't know if I can do that. So I had intended to move more towards scripted things, maybe sketch stuff, but um, since I wasn't able to mention too many sketch shows, then maybe that's not my future. But definitely moving towards horror. So I don't know if that's comedy infused or just straight up horror, but I'm definitely moving towards that. That's the dream. That's like the ultimate dream, honestly. Like, is comedy the dream for me? Not necessarily. Horror is like, if I ended up at like Blumhouse or a production studio or was doing stuff for like indie horror that's through A24 or something like that, that would be my ultimate dream. And I want to reach that by age 50. If I can't, I don't know if I'll feel like a success, but or Joe Swanberg or something super micro budget indie horror. Someone please pull me on. I will do any component. I can make costumes, can sew, writes, film, anything. Gaffer. I'll be
Indeed.
the world's oldest gaffer.
I think
Whatever.
I think you'll get there. I feel like we're in like a relay race, and I just passed the baton to you because like we're like I started off in horror, and then I'm moving to comedy, and then you're
Yeah,
starting
yeah, please.
comedy, and then you're moving to horror. So
Wait, let's do it on screen. Hand it to me.
there you go, buddy.
Hand it. Thank you.
There you are.
I got it.
Indeed. And let's see here. And you mentioned you wanted to do film work and video work, and which other forms of comedy would it venture off into, like improv, sketch, and comedy writing, directing, acting, etc.
All of the above. I'm most excited and willing to do any part of it. I think I didn't want to do it this early necessarily. Like I really still wanted to work on stand up writing and performing just to like get those beats down and just get very comfortable with that scene and feeling it out, like getting like riding those waves and connecting with an audience. And I was hoping to do stand up for at least another 2 to 3 years, just to like really feel good, feel more comfortable in it, like I'm not totally there, but I felt like once I had that down and was at a certain point that I could focus more on writing. Like I do have like a pilot script and I have sketches and I have like my late night packet, I have all those things, but I still wanted to focus on stand up and like be moving around more. So I'm open to doing any part, but I think I'm going to have to, I'm working on a book, uh, a photo book. And once I get that out, I may go back to another book I was writing in 2015, which is a more serious thing on education, get those out of my life, and then start working on scripts again and working on pilots and see where that goes. So we'll see. And then it's like the grind again of trying to get stuff seen.
Absolutely, that's the joys, and one of the joys in life is just those peaks and valleys, and the
Yeah.
trusting the process. And let's see here. What is your favorite joke a comedian has ever written?
My favorite. Wow. That's like, let's see. Favorite joke. Oh, I think Nate Bargatze has that story about the like the gator palace. Do you know that story where like the gator gets out and then it's just like all chaos sort of ensues, but it's about a whole review. It ends up with like a review about that place where you can read the review and like that joke, like that story and that just whole bit is so funny and so exciting and like captures such a nice moment of being like completely lost in this moment in Florida. I picked it because it's Florida related, and for your Florida fans, well, I really enjoy that joke. His coffee cream. I don't know. I just the stories he tells are so genius and they're so like I want to say simple, but they're not. They're like infinitely listenable. I think. Yeah.
Indeed, most definitely. Thanks for the Florida shout out too, with all the
Yeah.
gators. I see.
Was that good? Man, look at me.
Good stuff for sure. And let's see here. We have another couple viewers here, so if you'd like to jump in the comment section, feel free to ask us anything.
Hey,
But
viewers, don't leave. Ask us a question. Any question, we will answer any question. Our specialists in many things. Also, please subscribe to Sareth's OnlyFans page.
indeed, absolutely, I'll set that up pronto. So, oh, there's Jorge Lucero says the Nate Bargatze Dead Horse bit is a pretty good one too. So,
Oh yeah, the dead horse. Is that what we do? Like that horse is dead. What's up, Jorge? Good to see you. Thanks for logging in.
absolutely, indeed, and feel free to not only subscribe to my channel, but also to Chris's, which is below, and also his Instagram and his website. Feel free to go to check out all those out too. And
Wait, I have a question for Jorge Lucero. Jorge, Compound Yellow, my show. Would you say that I bombed? Did I bomb that show, or was it a success?
indeed, I'll have him answer in the
Okay, Jorge was there. Jorge was there. So
cool, awesome. And let's see here. We'll wait for his answer, and then I'll tell you. And for the next question is, what experience would you like your audience to take with them after a set is over?
Sorry, what was the question?
What experience would you like your audience to take with them after a set is over?
Oh, the experience after thinking about my entire life and career is you should pursue the thing that you're most excited about and like that you're most passionate about and get really good at that. Do that thing and keep doing it. Whether people say it's great or not, you decide and you make it. Unless it's something completely horrible and terrible for society.
Indeed, and Jorge says, "You're my inspiration, Chris." And no, it was success. So you didn't.
Oh, nice! I like that. Thank you.
Indeed,
That was not a bomb.
indeed,
Crushed it.
you crushed it. You destroyed the place. So you lit the stage on fire.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see here. So as this the next part of the show is what Larry Fulford did for you was to nominate folks to be on the next guest.
Yeah.
And so this is like my secret society, my cabal, my like Clive Barker's book, Nightbreed the movie. It's my Midian. It's only for like people that are in the know. So that's what this whole secret society of stand-up comedy is for this show, the Speakeasy.
Oh,
So,
Nightbreed. Love Nightbreed.
it's such a great film, and
So good.
so with that being said, this is our Nightbreed. This is our Midian. So this is who would you like to nominate as part of the show? Which is like who's your favorite open micer that you'd like to bring into the fold?
Open micer. So in terms of open micer, is open micer someone who hasn't done a showcase but just does open mics, or someone that I've met at an open mic?
Both, if you'd like.
I think someone you would really have fun talking to. I wouldn't consider him an open micer. I think just amazing comedian is Aaron Klopfer. Aaron Klopfer, so funny, so good, makes some of the best video work out there and is incredibly talented. I just think Aaron Klopfer is definitely someone you want to talk to. And he's out in Chicago.
Sweet. And your favorite feature?
Favorite feature, I heard Larry Fulford say Cameron Gillette, I think, and I do. I love Cameron Gillette. Cameron Gillette's so great. Feature, I would say, let's see. Ooh, for feature, I would say Mr. and Mrs. Wednesday Night. That's Lily and Charlie, and they run a show out here in Hideout, and they're wonderful. They're so good. They're so good. They do improvised musical comedy, and they're just amazing improvisers. And they throw on an amazingly energetic show. Some of the best hosts I've ever seen.
Indeed. What just out of curiosity, what's Lily and Charlie's last names?
It's Lily Emerson and Charlie Malave.
Okay. I'll be sure to add them, or like reach out to them, and it'll be in their inbox and stuff like that. So
Yeah, hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Malave. I think it's Malave. So
for sure. And how
yeah,
about your favorite host? Who would you like to bring onto the show?
favorite host. I think one of the most energetic hosts that I have ever seen, who just has such a great vibe on stage, is Kelsey Huff. Kelsey Huff is just like so good at hosting.
Indeed, most definitely. And your favorite headliner?
Favorite headliner would be, oh man, Maddie Ryan. Maddie Ryan. Maddie Ryan is a riot and has this whole bit about greyhound dogs and just like a lot of animals in general. And they're so weird, so overly descriptive, and like really great. So
Indeed.
great headliner.
And favorite showrunner of your choice?
Favorite showrunner, definitely Mr. and Mrs. Wednesday Night, but I've already said that. So I would say favorite showrunner is definitely Megan Stalter, who's in New York. Megan Stalter runs an insane, any show that she runs is insane. Her Instagram is insane. She's taken over New York, yeah, the New York comedy scene, but she's definitely my favorite showrunner, I think, of all time.
Awesome. How about when in Chicago currently?
Oh, in Chicago, Meredith Keschel runs a great show, Chicago Underground Comedy, which I will remind everyone I bombed on my debut. And yeah, she's great. She's great at running a show. It's a super fun show. So definitely worth checking out.
Indeed. I'll definitely reach out to all those folks and bring them into the fold. And
Yeah. Oh, I have more favorite showrunners though. Is that
yeah,
can I
nominate them all, you guys.
can I
Bring them all.
nominate them all?
Yeah, what?
Uh, yeah, I mean, there's just like there's so many. Like, there's a show called Jug here, which was run by Naomi, Rima, and Claire, and that show is like them as hosts are really great. They're really fun. But there's this other show here called Phantom Pilots, and it's run by like I think it's pretty much run by an entire improv team. And they what they do is they improvise a pilot script that was never produced from a book. So you choose a page in the book and all this stuff. So, but it's like it's a really fun show. Which I mean, there are a lot of names for that one, so I'll have to get you names after the show if you're interested in that. But the Phantom Pilots run a great show, which I don't know if the venue's around anymore or if it's closing down. So I have no idea.
Yeah, definitely message me all their names from the open micers to the showrunners, and then I'll reach out to all of them, or you can connect us via Messenger, and then
Yeah.
I'll have them on the show because I just love creating this like total complete opposite experiment where it's like instead of like share and subscribe and leave a positive review for this podcast, and I'd much rather go the opposite route, and because there's just so many out there. But I'll definitely start promoting these at the start of 2021. But I want to just stockpile all these up and then because
Hell yeah.
our cool MIDI and our little where the weirdos come out and play.
Oh wait, one more show. I almost forgot, and I totally have to give a plug to the guys that run Shithole. There's a show called Shithole here, and they ran, I want to say, over 500 shows, and it's like 2 shows a week. They do them in undisclosed locations. They are the most fun shows. Those are like my favorite shows. That's Kevin, Dan, Zach, and Lauren, and they just do an amazing show, and it's like so sad that the quarantine has stopped that and that the pandemic, because those shows are packed and the crowds that come to those shows are really fun. So maybe if anything, that's like my number one favorite show of all time in Chicago right now. It's like those guys are great. It's
Man,
so fun. Wow, we've been talking forever. Do you think, are people still on? Are people watching?
I think Jorge's still here, so that's
Yeah, Jorge.
hey, what a trooper! Thank you so much for being here, and man, that's like this is our Joe Rogan experience, like version of like this whole podcast. This is like
And
the one
audience, can you guess which one of us has to go to the bathroom more?
I'm thinking Chris has to go to the bathroom. So, with that being said, any final words you'd like to give out to the viewers at home or anything?
What was that? What was that?
Any final words that are like parting words that you like to give out to the audience?
Oh yes.
This
Just remember that the final day voting November, get into politics. Joe Rogan experience. We, yeah. I hope the America that we see after election day is better than the one that we see now. Is that good? I have hope for the future, no matter what happens, but I'm nervous. But I have a lot of hope. So hope you and your families are doing well. And I'm going to make this an hour long. Now, does anyone have any questions about their mental health and how they're dealing with the pandemic?
for sure. Like Jorge is like good stuff I do, so hopefully he shares his knowledge with us and stuff um, later on. But that's fantastic, and thank you so much, Jorge, for joining us, Jorge, in the comment section, and Chris, and for me, Sareth. This is the Stand Up Speakeasy, and I'll piece everything together and send it your way, and so you can have a bathroom break and check on your kids and all that. Good stuff. After 3 hours of like our own Joe Rogan experience, we should.
Oh yeah. Wait, can I ask that you record some like satanic messages backwards? So if people play this whole thing backwards, there's like a hidden message or something in there.
We'll definitely try our best to. We'll try and pull off one of those subliminal messages there, and
Wouldn't that fit our horror background? I think it would be very fitting.
I think so too.
Our
Like
love of horror.
indeed, it's so great to connect with you on the horror level and the comedy level, and just taking a trip down memory lane of your 20-year career of everything. So that was quite a journey, I would say, for sure, for both of us.
Heck yeah.
But I'll be sure to message you all my favorite books that Clive has ever written too. So and so that way you can read some to your kids. They're the appropriate ones, and that's what I like to describe my comedies. Like, if I put my cleaning jokes in the beginning, it's Texas Chainsaw. But if I go for like the For Your Throat, it's just all Clive Barker inspired comedy. So with all the dirty stuff, you're gonna be like, wow, okay, now I see why Clive told you to be a comic. So awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do the Stand Up Speakeasy. It means the world to me, and for Chris and for myself and the Stand Up Speakeasy for cutiepie.com. Donate and to all the fine organizations below this YouTube video on behalf of Chris, and subscribe to his YouTube channel. Visit his website. Follow him on Instagram with those that's scrolling on the bottom there. And thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Be safe.